And we are streaming. Go ahead.
Oh, fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to this evening's joint city and county meeting. And I'm trying to remember, is this the first one with the board and the council, this new board?
Board and council, yes.
Oh, how about that? Isn't that fantastic? Well, with that, the first item of business is to call the meeting to order, which I'm doing right now. And we get in an exchange of going between the city and county in terms of chairing this. I welcome the mayor to hop on when I wander off in that way, and we need to pull things back on track of what's going on. Same thing with the council members. I see you have a C and Q methodology of how you line up for comments. So if I get behind, nudge me on what's going on with this. Next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So I ask everybody to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're out there in public, protocol would be to face to the east if you didn't have a flag. And so if you please join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And then, actually, you have noted that you have your mission statement read. So who typically does that? Do we have a council member or?
Well, if I could actually do it, it might be my first time because normally I have the council members participate in this part.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
If you wouldn't mind, Chair.
Oh, absolutely. Please do, Mayor.
Yeah, the mission of the city of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all. Thank you.
Oh, you can't beat that one. Absolutely. I like it. Very succinct, too. So next item of business, we're on item number 3, and this is roll call. So Stacy, I'll turn it over to you.
Chairman Ryan.
I am present.
Vice Chairwoman Fowler.
Excused. And if she joins us, we'll admit her.
Supervisor Begay.
Here.
Supervisor Horseman.
Present.
Supervisor Vasquez.
Here.
Mayor Deasy.
Here.
Vice Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Councilmember Aslan.
I can't answer that without a lawyer present. Oh, wait. I'm here.
Present.
I'm here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
I am defending myself as here.
Councilmember Salas.
I am fully present here via Teams. Hello all.
Councilmember Shimoni.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Present.
All right, fantastic. Not only do we have one lawyer present, we have more than one lawyer present. And so, yeah, I know. And we have a council that's, boy, you're a little feisty out there. That's fantastic. Should be a good meeting. Hopefully we can move through this. I understand you've had some long nights here, so let's see what we can do. And then next piece is I'm looking at that, just to comment on the public comment. Actually, if you can handle that, Stacy, on how we're set up for this particular meeting.
Yes, Chairman Ryan, we do not have any public participation at this time.
Okay, so there is an opportunity, as with any public meeting, it is public, and people can view the meeting, and we meet our state statutory requirements associated with that. All right, well, thank you. Next
Chairman
item.
Ryan,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think I see Vice Chairwoman Fowler coming in right now. So I just wanted to confirm that she is in the meeting.
Okay, we're seeing if you're out there, Lena.
I'm in the meeting. Hello, sorry. Had a hard time finding the link. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can see that you're at the Colorado River again there. All right. Thank you, Lena, for joining us.
Ferry behind you?
Is it, say that again?
Is that Lee's Ferry? I just got a quick glimpse of it.
Yeah, I believe so, that Lena has
It
there.
is. That's where I am.
Same initials. It has the same initials.
That's right. Oh, there you go. All right. Part of District 5. Let's see. Next item that we have is item number 5, which is the COVID-19 update. And this one, I understand from our side, is Kim Musselman that'll be presenting. And if we have staff, I'm sure you'll probably do this just for the sake of the meeting. Please introduce yourself. And if you have somebody else speaking on behalf of either agency, if you can introduce them as well. So we'll turn it over to Kim. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Chair Ryan, and supervisors. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to provide a bit of an overview and update in particular about our numbers and where we are seeing ourselves through this pandemic, and speak quite a bit about vaccinations and our efforts around that Herculean task that we are in the middle of. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And thank you, Deputy City Manager Shannon Anderson, for sharing my slides for me. I appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and start with slide 1. Or the next slide, please. So I just want to touch, I know both the board and the council regularly hear updates from staff about our numbers, and I just wanted to share where we are with our reports. The county produces a report every week for the prior week ending on a Saturday. So we have, this is from the week ending April 17th, and just a couple highlights to point out here that we have our case benchmarks. Our number per 100,000 is sitting in the substantial category right now. It is returned back into that category a couple of weeks ago after we had seen a significant decline in cases, which was fantastic. We started to see a little bit of an uptick, and we currently are still sitting at 102 per 100,000 for that week ending April 17. Our percent positivity was at 6.4%, keeping us in the moderate category. And then our COVID-like illness was at 1.6%. The couple notes I just want to point out, we had an 11% decrease in COVID cases from week 14 to 15, and 90% of week 15 cases were located here in Flagstaff. Of course, we are doing data for the entire county. And so 90% of week 15 cases were here in Flagstaff, and 77% of those total cases reported in week 15 were individuals in the age range of 20 to 44. I just want to point that out because as we start talking about vaccinations, that plays into it. The primary increases in transmission is currently among our 18 to 24-year-old group. Ultimately, dining and drinking activities are presenting the highest risk of transmission right now, particularly at bars, parties, and sports practices, and in particular those indoor sports practices. But ultimately, again, it's essential to continue with our physical distancing, masking, and other mitigation measures. One very positive note that I'd like to point out is that we have had 0 reported deaths over the last 2 weeks in Coconino County. That is incredibly significant, given that we had had a COVID-related death among Coconino County residents in each week since March of 2020. So that is, a moment to reflect on that. That's very significant, and really, truly, hopefully what is now going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Next slide, please. Just wanted to share real quickly, because that weekend report I had said goes through April 17. This graph here just gives you a quick snapshot of actually where we're looking to end this week. As of last night's numbers, we were at 144. You can see in that week ending April 24, we were at 144 cases. We're hoping that's going to hold over the next couple days as we solidify the numbers for the report and continue to represent a downward trend again. Next slide, please. So now I would like to talk about vaccinations and where we are in Coconino County and in our communities with vaccination. On the county website and as part of our county weekly reports, we have added a page speaking specifically to vaccinations by residency. Our epidemiology team breaks down the data even further than the state dashboard numbers with respect to some zip codes that are represented, depending on what people put into the system when they are showing up for their vaccination appointment. And as you can see on this chart, there's the total percentage of our county population that has been vaccinated with at least one dose is at 45.9%. So as of this afternoon off the state dashboard, we were at just right there at that 46%. And then we also break it a little bit further with our team to look at the eligible population that's been fully vaccinated. And what we mean by that is the eligible population is the age range that can actually receive vaccination at this time, that it's authorized for those age ranges to receive vaccination. And right now that is 16 and older with the Pfizer vaccine. And then of course, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson for 18 and older. And so what we have done on the county side is we've taken our eligible population using census data and breaks in numbers. So what we consider our eligible population number that we are calculating this off of is our 15 and older age range. Even though 15-year-olds can't get it yet, that's where the census data break is with age range. So with that said, we have just over 47% of our eligible population has been fully vaccinated. So that would mean they'd received both doses of Moderna or Pfizer or the single dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Just a couple of trends I want to point out and just also some other numbers to share with you. 66,082 residents have received at least one dose of COVID vaccine. As indicated up there is just at that, just under 46%, and 55,110 residents are fully vaccinated, getting us to that 47% with respect to the eligible population number we are using. Our individuals in the 65 and older have the highest vaccination percentage among all age groups. We're actually at about 80 to 85% of that age bracket being vaccinated in Coconino County. And again, the 47% of eligible county population has been vaccinated with the highest rates of vaccinations in Page, our tribal communities. And next slide, please. So you may have heard yesterday there was more recent recommendations released from CDC regarding fully vaccinated people. I know this is a pretty busy slide. I'm not going to hit on all of these things. But the choosing safer activities, there's a link at the bottom of this slide if you wish to go to this full guidance that was released by CDC yesterday. But what I just want to point out with respect to this slide and the choosing safer activities is really about what people can do now once they become fully vaccinated. And I share this as we are looking at our next challenge, which is we had a high demand for vaccine and a really low amount of vaccine when we initially started back in January and actually the end of December vaccinating our healthcare workers. And now we have more than enough vaccine available, and we are working really diligently to actually get more people to come and be vaccinated. So we've hit a nexus, and we're actually onto our next challenge about getting the rest of our population, the other 50%, a little over 50% of our community, and ultimately all around the state and of course the country as well, fully vaccinated. And the point I want to make here is really about vaccinations and the importance of all of us helping our neighbors, our families, our friends, and those understand the importance of getting vaccinated, even if you have had COVID-19. Because of the ability to actually have that immunity and get our communities, our events, our activities back to the way things were before COVID. Next slide, please. So where are people able to get vaccinated? So we're super excited. We have now the Northern Arizona Regional Pod was opened up just almost a week and a half ago at the NAU Fieldhouse. I want to just make a couple of highlighted points here that this is the location where the Pfizer vaccine is available, and the Pfizer vaccine is authorized for use for all people who are 16 and older, and it is currently being reviewed for emergency use authorization for 12 and up. And so at this time, this has really helped broaden the population that we can be vaccinating here in Coconino County and around our state, as Moderna and Johnson & Johnson has that 18 years of age and older who is eligible to receive it. At the field house, the hours are currently 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The pod site, because it is not being utilized as heavily as it was hoped, they are looking and modifying hours of operation, and there will be information coming out through NAU, through the state, through the county, with those dates and changes as they are starting to occur. I also want to just point out some really significant things. If there are folks who received their first dose of Pfizer at another location, another state pod, another state for that matter, and they are due for their second dose of Pfizer, they can go to the NAU Fieldhouse for that second dose, and they just need to bring their CDC vaccination record card when they are arriving so that they can share that, and then the site will know they are getting their second dose and can record it appropriately. Certainly there are still appointments that are available that folks can schedule an appointment if you prefer to fill out all the paperwork ahead of time. But I really want to stress that this location, along with all of our other, certainly our county locations and our pop-ups that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, are all receiving walk-ups. There is no need to, at this point, to schedule any appointments. And even on the second doses for the Moderna vaccine, for the locations providing Moderna, you can show up for that second dose, of course, in the appropriate time frame when you are due, which is at that 28 day and beyond mark for getting that second dose. Next slide, please. So in addition to the NAU Fieldhouse, there are lots of efforts that are going on around the entire county, and certainly right here in Flagstaff. Want to be really clear and let folks know that vaccinations are now currently open to the public regardless of residency, whether you live in another county, whether you live in another state. We have plenty of vaccine here in Coconino County, and we want to encourage everyone to get vaccinated. We know we're a tourist destination. We know we have lots of folks coming to visit as the weather is getting warmer, and really as we talk about our safety and getting to a community immunity sense, it's really much broader than just the city of Flagstaff and Coconino County's numbers. It's really about all the people that we're going to come into contact with. So sharing that message would be hugely appreciated. Certainly we wanted to just add to that we have no appointment required at our Fort Tuthill location, and as I said, at the NAU Fieldhouse. And then as we start to do all these pop-ups, those are also no appointment needed. And on your slide there's a picture. Today, actually, we did a quick little pop-up on the county courthouse lawn from 11 to 1. And while there was only about 10 or so folks between those 2 hours that got vaccinated, what was really great about it in talking to staff is that there were lots of people walking up, inquiring about it, wondering when we were going to be back, sending out messages and social media announcements to friends, family, and others. And so we will be establishing, I'll just let you all know, we're going to be establishing a regular recurrence there at the courthouse, along with a bunch of other potential pop-up locations that I'm going to share some of with you here in just a moment. The last thing I want to mention on this slide is also our transition to the second dose Moderna everywhere model. And what I mean by that is, as we are at the Fort Tuthill location, getting ready to scale that operation down so that we can do more pop-up work rather than have a mass site location that people have to travel to. Now it is really about convenience for folks, and we want to have vaccine where people are so that it's a convenience factor, that they don't have to think about, schedule, get in a car, travel somewhere that they're not normally doing. So with that is our second dose Moderna anywhere model. And what that means is, in particular at Tuthill and other locations, we're not scheduled, people aren't scheduling second dose appointments 28 days out. What we're letting folks know and giving people information is all the locations where Moderna vaccine is available, and that you can go to any of those to get your second dose. We've met with all of our vaccine partners around Flagstaff and the entire county, and they are all on board with this type of model so that we can, one, make sure people can get their second dose when they are due, and also help us to manage any waste of vaccine. Next slide, please. This is just a list of, not all of them, but an overview of where are the current vaccine providers here in Flagstaff. And I just want to point out that there are all of the various pharmacies have vaccine and availability. The most recent ones coming on board was Sam's Club, so Safeway, Fry's, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, Sam's Club, and the Genoa Pharmacy, which happens to be in the Guidance Center, all have vaccine available and appointment availability. Vera Clinic, for all of the NAPEPT employees and their families, continues to provide vaccine appointment availability. North Country Healthcare has been an incredible partner in vaccinating since the beginning. Also continues to have appointments, as well as doing some other events around the county in some of their other locations. Embry Health is here in town, also providing vaccines out at the Greenlaw Baptist Church. And then, of course, some of our independent providers and private doctors' offices who are serving their employees specifically, or their employees' families, as is the case with Gore. And then the private doctors' offices many of them also have vaccine availability. And I just, to all of you and to the public listening, you go to our county website and you can, and there's a link on this slide, and click on the COVID-19 vaccination locations, and you'll be able to see everywhere that is participating and providing vaccines. Next slide, please. So what are we doing with our outreach? We at HHS have been actively planning mobile vaccination events in partnership with locations throughout the county. We are working with other healthcare providers to do some additional types of partnerships, and working with our community organizations on outreach and scheduling events. And some of those include the Interfaith Council, our diversity councils, our neighborhood associations, nonprofit organizations, including looking to set up some pop-up clinics in lots of different locations into neighborhoods. Had some conversation with Sarah Dar about getting some pop-ups in our housing authority and housing communities, and have been working with, as I indicated before, we did an event with the Interfaith Council up at the Catholic Church about a week ago. We'll be going back for second doses and another round, and just a lot of different places, again, about bringing the vaccine to our community. Lastly, I just want to point out, we're also exploring some opportunities to work with the business and community-based organizations around some incentives that the business community may want to participate in and help us get that message out about the importance of getting vaccinated, and then ultimately having some types of incentives that then maybe people can benefit from by bringing their vaccine card, showing that they have been vaccinated. Next slide, please. And kind of one of the last things I wanted to touch on is, and just kind of bring this all back full circle, is what I had mentioned a little bit ago regarding where we were when we started this journey with vaccinations and COVID-19 to where we are today. And it's really at the stage now about access, addressing questions and concerns and any hesitancy, and ultimately about convenience. And so taking those three kind of target areas and really looking at what is our strategy going forward, as I mentioned about the incentives, that really that community-based connection, having locations where we have subject matter experts that people can ask questions and get that solid information that they may need to help them understand what vaccination is trying to accomplish and their need and how they can contribute to helping get to our community immunity and be in a place where we have get our lives back to some semblance of normal. As we have brought in the Pfizer vaccine, we have been working with NAU and our Northern Arizona healthcare partner that are helping operate the pod at NAU, and have been reaching out to the schools, hoping to come up with a night or a couple of dates at the pod site where schools can have a competition that's set aside as schools nights to get those 16 and 17-year-olds in there. And as soon as we know that there is emergency use authorization, which we're hoping to hear from the CDC in the next few weeks, they have been saying all along late spring. So we are hopeful to hear something by mid-May about the authorization for those 12 to 15-year-olds, which will be another game changer for us with respect to getting even our younger population vaccinated. Of course, getting to that scheduling where we're not having appointments, that we're having more locations with our pop-up vaccination operations, and really looking to what are those locations where we can connect with the populations, reduce barriers, and increase convenience. Some of the places that we are looking to do some of those pop-ups, as I had indicated, were the housing authorities locations, the food center, the courthouse lawn, nearby on the south side, working with some of the neighborhood associations. So just really looking at all of our ways in which we can get at the next group of folks that we need to make sure that we get vaccinated. And next slide, please. So lastly, just want to end with the ongoing need for mitigation testing, and then of course, how vaccination plays into that. As we continue to have community transmission, that right now requires that we maintain our mitigation measures that overall our community has been doing a phenomenal job of, regardless of what the status of executive orders are from the state. Our community is incredibly compliant with understanding the importance of mitigation measures and wearing masks indoors, and at medium and large size gatherings, continuing to hand wash and physical distance. And then the other piece to that is also that continuation of the testing efforts. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to share with all of you, we've had lots of testing efforts that have been ongoing since the very, very early days of the pandemic and in early March. And we continue to have community testing locations, free testing locations. I want to call that out. The NAU testing location will be terminating on May 7th at the NAU Field House, at least for the foreseeable future, but we still have the CCC ASU location that is still performing saliva-based testing free of charge. 6 days a week, at least through the end of May. That is the plan right now. We're in some other conversations regarding their contracts and also working on some other future testing opportunities. There's a contract being explored and actually in discussions from the state to actually bring a statewide process for testing in schools and pooled school-based testing, which is going to be huge and hugely helpful to all of our schools across the county. And this includes all K through 12 public, private, and charter schools. So once we have more information as the state gets closer in confirming that contract, we will be sharing that information, but this is going to be hugely beneficial to our schools, to our families, and to our community. And in closing, I just want, before asking if there's any questions that I can entertain, just coming back full circle of the importance of vaccinating all eligible individuals. That is truly how we are going to get to that community immunity and be able to start enjoying the many things that we have all been missing out on for well over a year now. So with that, that concludes my formal presentation, and I'll turn to Chair Ryan for next steps.
All right, thank you. Very good job. And just for the sake of the board, since we're just now doing this, we got a little bit of echoing. So, I'd probably ask people to mute until we have an opportunity to speak. So for the board, council, what they do is they put a C in for comment or a Q in question in the chat box, and we'll see if we can work that out. If we start messing up, I can do an audio version of what's going on as well. No matter what, just as a follow-up, we've been immersed in this COVID for over a year now. A lot of good work done by staff, but most importantly, reaching out to the public, how important it is to vaccinate. Just using safe practices. When you're in a crowd, definitely wear a mask. When you wash your hands, everybody wash your hands, just like we learned in kindergarten. So anyway, that would be great. So I'm looking out here and let's see, seeing if we have any comments or questions from council or the board. And I'm not seeing, oh, there we go, my computer. Okay, so we took care of the echo that was going on there. And then we have a comment by the mayor. And then after that, we have Supervisor Horstman. Go ahead, Mayor. Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mrs. Muswin. I am so excited that we are to the point where not only do we have open appointments, but we're to the point where people can just walk in to get their vaccine. And whew, long road here, longer for you, I know, than the rest of us. So I just wanted to say I appreciate your leadership in this regard, and I'm excited looking at these numbers. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Supervisor Horstman. Patrice?
Yes, and as always, Director Musselman and her staff have just rocked this, and I know probably all of us have heard from our community members how pleased they are about the rollout, not only of the free testing, and the testing sites have been pretty convenient all across the county, but certainly our vaccination efforts. So, just Cam, and she hears me say this all the time, but she and her staff really truly have rocked this. And I so appreciate that. And there was a comment that Director Musselman made, and that is that, the easy part is over, quote, easy part is over. And now the hard work begins to try to get everyone vaccinated. This remaining 50%, and there is vaccination hesitancy is real, and we need to go out there and do what we can. And I know the county through these mobile units, I know Supervisor Vasquez and others have really been trying to get out in our Hispanic community and some of our neighborhoods that are harder to reach to try to pass the word, and it's all of our responsibility. Adam, I know you love social media, so we just need to get ourselves on social media and get the word out to get people out and get them vaccinated. I have talked, and I would highly recommend that you all as well, to try to recruit our business community and get them on board with this marketing on getting the vaccines going. There'll probably be more information, I think, coming, but I think it's really important to try to get our business community on board. I know a lot of communities are giving incentives, 5% off or whatever on the day of vaccinated, or a free drink at the local restaurant, whatever, just again to get people out there and get vaccinated. We aren't going to get back to normal until we reach a large percentage of our population that have been fully vaccinated. So again, Director Musselman, man, you just rock, and so appreciate all of your efforts. And it's great to be here at this joint meeting today. So thank you, Chair Ryan. That's it from me.
All right. Thank you, Patrice. And next up, we have Council Member Shimoni. Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see everybody. Thank you all at the county for joining us tonight and for your partnership ongoing. Kim, I want to start off by saying thank you. I think that this past year has been a bumpy ride, and we're not through it yet, but in these conversations and in the updates regarding the number of deaths being at 0 for the first time 2 weeks consecutively, we've just come such a long way, and I'm just extremely grateful to the county's leadership in really taking charge on this. So I want to thank you, Mrs. Musselman, especially for your leadership on this. I want to thank Dr. Peoples, who is no longer with the county, for her leadership on this. Deputy Manager Keene and Andriani, thank you both. And then former County Manager Jimmy Jane and current Manager Peru, thank you all for your leadership on this. And the rest of the team, I know there's numerous people I'm not mentioning, but I think you all have done a really good job at getting us to where we're at today. And the update is very exciting as we're talking about. Supervisor Horseman, you're right. Videos. As soon as we were talking, I was like, gosh, we need videos. We need videos and social media. And I'm thinking 2 different types of videos is where I would focus on in my recommendations to you all at the county if possible. One is just short promotional videos to overcome that hesitancy component. Maybe just a series of 4 videos by key individuals with quality videography. And then the other one is just little 1-minute clips that you all do really well leading up to a vaccination event and at the vaccination event itself. You've done that in the past, and I just think that goes a long way in building that public awareness. And then I agree with you. I think it was Supervisor Horseman who talked about partnership with businesses. I was thinking the same thing. How can we loop in the chamber, the DBA, agencies like NALA, ICONA, and others, because they want us to get back to a sense of normalcy as much as anyone else does, for the sake of their own economic vitality and future. So I wonder how we can leverage that partnership. And maybe it's through, sharing like a little Facebook profile picture filter, right, that goes over your cover photo or your profile photo, or some kind of messaging. I was thinking about Heidi Hansen at the city at our economic vitality individual, and thinking about our mask up little watermark graphic in the posters we've done. I almost wonder if we should start shifting the message to also vaccination and pro-vaccination messaging that we can then use in partnership with the community. So those are my comments. I appreciate it, Chair, and thank you so much, Kim. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Looks like we have Supervisor Vasquez, Geronimo. You're next up. It looks like you have your hand raised there.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I just wanted to take the moment to, as usual, congratulate and thank Director Musselman and her team for their professionalism and their leadership during this trying time, and just throw out there the plug again. Just, we got to hold on. We're almost there, but we're not quite there. And it's going to take a team effort. And we all need to help contribute to lead the charge. And we appreciate the leadership that's gone through and the vaccination efforts. There's proof in the pudding, We can see the efforts. We can see it's coming together. And so just hold strong, keep going, because we're not out of the woods yet, but we're getting there. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm not seeing any questions. I am looking at the potential of incentivizing. Wouldn't it be nice to have incentives out there that we had special refreshments to get people to do their vaccines? But most importantly, we definitely want to continue to encourage people to vaccinate. Very important that we use these safety practices, even more importantly, to help fend off variants that are out there. So for those that haven't gotten vaccines, please do. It'll help us, as noted, open our community back up. Seeing no additional questions or comments from council or the board, I'll go ahead and move us on to next item. Item number 6 is the overview of the city's response to the passage of Smart and Safe Arizona Act, Proposition 207, which has legalized recreational marijuana. And I know Joanne Keene handles from our side. Who do we have from the city side?
Hi, Chairman Ryan. This is Kevin Finsel. I'm the Deputy City Attorney for the City of Flagstaff.
All right, Kevin. Thank you. I'm pleased.
Yeah, no problem. Chairman, Board Supervisors, Mayor, and Council, again, my name is Kevin Finsel. I'm the Deputy City Attorney for the City of Flagstaff, and I get the joy of presenting to you about marijuana. So what I'll cover today is, first I'll provide an overview of the Act, a little bit about the history of the Act. I'll cover some of the key provisions and some enforcement issues we identified and addressed in the city ordinance. And then I'll review briefly the ordinance that was adopted by the City Council. So the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, it was certified as Proposition 207. It was a statewide voter initiative. It was passed by the voters at the November 3rd, 2020 general election. And it passed pretty handily, especially up here in Coconino County. It became effective on December 1st, 2020. And essentially the act declared that the adult use of recreational marijuana is going to be legal in Arizona. Some of the key provisions that the act does, the act authorizes the sale of marijuana to adults who are at least 21 years of age. It authorizes adults over the age of 21 to possess marijuana up to 1 ounce. And it authorizes adults over the age of 21 to transport, cultivate, and process up to 6 marijuana plants. That is limited to 12 at a single residence. And if somebody is going to cultivate at their residence, it must be in an enclosed, secure area, not visible from public view. Few things the act does not do. So the act does not allow individuals to smoke marijuana in public or open space. It does not allow individuals to consume marijuana or marijuana products in a vehicle. The act does not restrict the ability of any person or business from prohibiting or regulating marijuana or marijuana consumption on their property, nor does it decriminalize the driving while impaired by marijuana. So specifically in the act, it actually authorized cities to take certain action and pass certain regulations, and a few of those. So the act authorized cities to prohibit or limit the number of recreational marijuana retail establishments. However, there was an exception for entities that hold a dual license to operate both a nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary as well as a recreational marijuana retail establishment at a shared location. It also authorized cities to prohibit or limit the number of recreational marijuana testing facilities, and it allowed cities to prohibit the possession, sale, and use on city property. So the act also allowed cities to prohibit or restrict delivery of recreational marijuana. However, this issue hasn't really arisen yet because it's unlawful under the state law until at least 2023. So we have a little bit of time here. And the City Council chose, therefore, not to address the delivery at this time. but to address it closer to 2023 after the Department of Health Services adopts their guidelines. It also allows cities to enact reasonable zoning regulations for recreational marijuana establishments. However, they cannot be more restrictive than the regulations for medical marijuana establishments. So some of the enforcement issues that we identified when we started reviewing the act is mainly some of the acts that are not allowed under the act did not carry over to the violations section in the act. A couple of those, the consumption in a motor vehicle, which I mentioned earlier, so that is clearly stated in the act that it's not allowed, but it didn't carry over to the violations section. And same with the cultivating or possessing more than 12 plants at a single residence. So we recommended that the city council adopt those and put them in the city ordinance. Another recommendation that came from the police department was to add a provision that required individuals to provide their personal information, accurate personal information, when they are lawfully detained. So getting to the ordinance, so the city council, we had a work session and then 2 regular council meetings where we discussed the act, and the council took the following actions. So the council decided to limit the recreational establishments to dual licensees. So what that means is we have our 2 medical marijuana establishments in the city and one right outside the city in the county. Those 2 medical marijuana establishments have become dual licensees, my understanding. So they are able to sell recreational marijuana, but we're limiting it to those 2 establishments at this point. Council will revisit this later on. I think definitely when the state passes some guidelines on the social equity licenses. But for right now, we're limited to the dual licensees. Council also chose to prohibit the consuming, growing, transferring, selling on city property. One thing that's not in here, so that what the city council chose not to do was to limit or prohibit the testing facilities. So those are allowed in the city. The council decided to prohibit the use on private property if posted, and as recommended by staff, added the violations that did not carry over in the act and made those penalties consistent with the penalties in the act. So we have a couple penalties in our ordinance, but there were violations and penalties, but they're consistent with the act. And then lastly, council did decide to add a requirement that individuals lawfully detained provide name, date of birth, and current address. And that is just to help with enforcement. And that's the summary I have for you tonight or this afternoon. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
All right. I'll check in with council or the Board of Supervisors, see if we have questions. And just a note from the county side, we're not presenting tonight. We're still looking at guidance from DHS as it is as we look at impacts to areas of our purview. And let's see. I have no council members or board members asking to comment or ask questions. So Kevin, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Oops, looks like before I let go, it looks like Vice Chair Lena Fowler is. Go ahead, Lena.
Watch out, City Council. I'm Vice Mayor now.
I knew you wouldn't let that go. There you go.
Yeah. So I have a question. I'm just wondering how you're coordinating. I'm sure our staff are coordinating, so just want to make sure that our city attorneys and the county attorneys, our sheriffs, our police department, and of course our health department is all involved in some way. I know that the health department the Arizona department has not really released its regulations or their interpretation yet. So I just want to ask that question: how are we working together on this issue? Because we were told by our there's a concern about the cartels moving up here, and you're only talking about the ordinance, which is really good, but that there's a bigger picture on how to work together. So I just wanted to ask you that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Vice Chairwoman Fowler. That's probably a question that's better answered by the individual groups. I'm not involved in a lot of those coordination efforts. So, for example, I assume it's happening. I know our city prosecutor, Brent Harris, has been very active in looking at this, as well as our police advisor, Marianne Sullivan. But when it comes to how our police department may be working with the sheriff's office, that's probably a better question for Chief Musselman, and with the prosecutor's office, as well as with the county attorney's office. I just haven't been involved in those communications yet. And I'm a little confused about the regulations. I don't know what regulations you're referring to. The Department of Health Services has adopted their initial regulations. They're at this point issuing licenses. I think they just issued the first round of licenses to rural counties who had less than 2 medical marijuana establishments. And what we're looking forward to next is actually the Department of Health Services adopting guidelines or proposed guidelines or regulations for the social equity licenses. I think that is going to be one of the next big steps for the Department of Health Services to address.
Okay, so I'm behind the times, I guess. So thank you for that correction. So I just wanted to see how, the new regulations are being implemented and how the community will know about these new regulations and how we're handling these. So I guess a community education component will be part of this process at some point.
Yeah, we've discussed it obviously at our public work session and council meetings. We adopted our ordinance. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any other specific outreach from the city on recreational marijuana. I'm not aware of if the county has done any outreach. But yeah, it's moving definitely very fast. And so the Department of Health Services adopted the initial regulations pretty quick. But those regulations are mostly, at least in my opinion, have to do with licensing. How they'll be licensed and some of the regulations on the establishments themselves. That's really what the majority was covered in those initial regulations.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, just want to ask another question. How well, and this is going to have to be with the police department, but this is in your, there's a violation section, consumption in a motor vehicle. How do you know that it is you're consuming and not a cigarette, but a medical marijuana? Recreational marijuana. That's what it is. And then also, what if someone had a medical marijuana license and are they able to consume it out in the vehicle or not? And there's 2 different medical marijuana and recreational marijuana there.
Right. Yeah. And if Chief Musselman is available, he may want to take those 2 questions. He probably.
Okay, that's okay. All right. Thank you. And we'll be following up with our sheriff as well. So, hello, Chief.
Good evening, Vice Chair. So yes, we've done training for our people, and we usually share our training documents with the sheriff's office when they want. But yes, during the course of the investigation, due to sight, smell, and in talking to people, if we can determine, their age and what they're allowed to possess and what they're allowed to use, most medical marijuana card holders aren't held accountable to the law unless they have possession over a certain amount. So we've got all that written out and provided that all to our people and shared it with other agencies as needed. So thank you.
I just think it sounds like it's challenging for police officers just to walk up and say, oh, you smell like there's, put your window down. There's a smell of medical marijuana or marijuana in general. And you don't know if it's recreational or medical. So it sounds like it's a challenging task for the law enforcement. That's all. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, no problem.
Times are changing, and so we're all figuring it out. As far as the county's concerned, also, we can always follow up with the sheriff's office in another opportunity, Supervisor Fowler. And again, similar idea. We're waiting for advice from DHS as well on the county side. Kevin, really appreciate your presentation, and Chief as well. We do have Council Member Aslan. So Austin has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Fowler, you mentioned that you were feeling behind the times. I'm not sure that you're the one who's behind the times. It's our city attorney's office who's got the Eddie Cow poster behind him. And I swear that's a black and white picture of Rick Tatter over his other shoulder there too. I might be wrong about that, but
that's actually Scott Overton. So always keeping an eye on me.
Is it? Is that really?
Yeah.
I hope so. So a serious question. I was just wondering, and this is for the county, I'm wondering if anybody has any updates or summary they can provide about other cities and towns in the county and what they're doing in terms of zoning regulations, marijuana establishments, and testing facilities. I know nothing about what else is going on around the county in terms of local jurisdictions.
So I'll turn to County Manager Peru and/or we have Deputy County Manager Keene as well.
Okay, I'll pass it over to Joanne, please.
There you go.
Well, sure. Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, Council Member Aslan. And I will point out that I did get a haircut, unlike Kevin. So I'm just going to point that out. So I
wasn't going to go there.
We have not heard anything from the jurisdictions within the county. I did want to check in to see from our health side, from Kim Musselman, if we've heard anything specific from the communities on the health side. But I don't believe we have any communities that have adopted any zoning or any ordinances similar to the city of Flagstaff. The other thing I just wanted to point out before I turn it over to Kim is that some of the things that the county's been looking at, obviously we're looking at our personnel policy. That's going to be the #1 thing that we bring to the board in the next month or so. We also looked at our current zoning ordinance. We did adopt some items related to the zoning ordinance when medical marijuana went into place, and we feel comfortable that those are still ones that we can keep in place. And then on the health side, I think what we're referring to is the rulemaking from the Department of Health Services and how that's going to impact the county's jurisdiction, specifically with the delegation agreement that we have with DHS. So that's been a lot of work that we're doing on our side. So Kim, can you just clarify what some of our communities may be looking at, and then maybe just an update on the rulemaking and those discussions with DHS?
And I wouldn't want us to go too in depth with this. This is sort of an overarching question, if there's anything that stands out or anything of interest that you guys are seeing. So definitely don't go down the rabbit hole if you don't need to.
Yeah, thanks. I would just say right now, Joanne is indicating that we have not had any other small of our other municipalities reach out to us specifically, and we are still waiting on some clarification out of ADHS from the county's perspective, and this is all of the 15 counties, in terms of regulation and about looking at food products and how we regulate under environmental health. So those are the things that we are waiting and still working through, both the state process as well as some legal processes that involve that. So we'll have more information on that, I hope, here in the coming months, that we'll be happy to share as we get it.
So what's interesting to me about this is that we're not hearing anything from other municipalities. I mean, is that noteworthy in and of itself, or is Flagstaff just way ahead of the the 8 ball in this, or is there a time frame in which they're supposed to report in, or is it just totally open to interpretation?
you mind if I jump in on that one? So Councilmember Aslan, if you're talking specifically about Coconino County, we may be one of the first, but we definitely weren't one of the first in the state. And there may be reasons for that, just because the number of recreational establishments you're going to see, at least in the beginning, is really tied to the medical. And we already had, at the time this was passed, we had 3, I believe, in Coconino County, if I'm not mistaken. And at that point, we weren't, one of the first groups of licenses that got distributed was to counties, rural counties that had less than 2 licenses, medical licenses. So we were obviously not in that category. So at that point, and that's what they just did, I think they just had a lottery for those. So now the only way it's going to be expanded further is through the social equity license program, which they don't have rules yet for those. And that's one thing we're waiting on. And we've talked about that at meetings. And I think it's still a little while out. They haven't even put out their draft rules yet. And then the only way to expand beyond that would be if more licenses opened up based on that 1-to-10 ratio of 1 marijuana establishment for every 10 pharmacies in the state. So you probably saw a lot of the bigger cities and towns address this sooner, but for smaller cities and towns, they don't have a medical marijuana establishment at all in their jurisdiction, and they're probably not going to get one anytime soon. So that's probably why you're not seeing it in some of the more rural towns.
Thank you.
All right. And it looks like, I think we're pretty much through questions, although I did see the mayor bubble up on the screen. Mayor, did you have a comment or question?
No, I just like to pop in to smile and give thumbs ups here and there.
Okay, there you go.
Because normally I got my camera on like you are doing these things. I feel a little weird. But I will note Councilmember Shimoni had a comment in the box there as well.
Okay. Oh, there you go. I did miss that. Oh, that was Adam, though. I was going to move on there. So, no, we definitely want Adam up. So, Councilmember Shimoni, Adam?
Chair, you're pushing it. You're pushing it.
Well, I don't have folk heroes like Scott Overton on my wall there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin, for the update. Worked on this. You might have mentioned this. Did you already mention what the council's plan to do with the proceeds from the tax of Prop 207?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Did you say the proceeds from the tax?
From the Prop 207 tax?
Yeah, no, I did not cover that, Councilmember Shimoni. I mean, you're welcome to share it. You probably know it better than I do.
I know it decently. Basically, a recent budget. I just think it's relevant and it's important. I think it's noteworthy for the county to hear this update. But the council voted in agreement to utilize those taxes, the tax revenue from recreational marijuana, to put that towards our alternative response model, which I think many of you are very familiar about. And we're not talking about that tonight, and I'm not trying to go into that too much, but there might be room for partnership on our alternative response model, and we can dive into that at a later date. But just something to keep in mind, that we're taking those revenues and putting it right back into this system as our response, alternative response. Thank you.
There you go. Take my microphone off. I think we've worked our way through it, and then again, there's the opportunity for council or board to do to follow up with questions offline as well on this. So that's a wrap on that item. That brings us up to item number 7. Item number 7 are impacts of the 2019 museum fire and the post-wildfire flood threat analysis and impacts to downstream communities. And as I understand, Andy Bertelson is going to begin this. And before Andy gets going, I just want to let you all know, Paul Babbitt and I brought Andy to town once upon a time to be our intern. He came from Iowa. And then he's just stuck around, and now he is leading your public works area. So, Andy, you're up on this.
Thank you, Chairman Ryan. It's great to see you. Good evening, Chairman Ryan, members of the Board of Supervisors, Mayor DZ, members of the City Council, thanks so much for having me tonight and having us tonight. I'm here with a team of folks to discuss the 2019 museum fire and the post-wildfire flooding impacts that fire has had, what we are prepared to have, and what the flooding potential that we could potentially have. We'll look at some of the data tonight. I know many of you have seen remnants or bits and pieces of this presentation. Sam Beckett, thank you for driving the presentation with Coconino County. Always appreciate it when Sam is behind the wheel. If I had a poster of anyone hanging behind me, it would probably be my partner in crime, Lucinda Andriani. Lucinda and I go back 11 years now in post-wildfire flood mitigation efforts. We've been colleagues for a number of years, and we are here to introduce a team to talk about the post-wildfire flood threat analysis and mitigation preparation. I'm going to first turn it to Lucinda and then Joe Leverich with J.E. Fuller and Associates, world-renowned hydrologist, to talk about the studies that they've done with this area. So in the interest of time, I will turn it over to Lucinda, and it's great to see everyone this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And yes, we do. In fact, we even go back before that, I'll say upstairs in finance.
We do.
Again, also pleased to be here tonight, Chair and Mayor and council members and board members, to provide an update as to the efforts underway to prepare for what we expect to be a normal monsoon, normal or even heavier than normal monsoon this coming monsoon season. And, this is a very important effort, as we had seen. Sam, you can go to the next slide. As Andy shared, Sam, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. As Andy shared, we went through Schultz together, and I think what's really important is that the city, the county, and what we call our hydrology team, which you're going to hear from Joe Leverich next, for J.E. Fuller, we've been working together since the beginning of the fire, literally, to prepare for what may be the eventuality, and because we know what we could potentially be experiencing. And we're just going to take a minute here to show one of the videos from the Schultz flooding to give people an opportunity to understand, why are we taking this so seriously? So go ahead, Sam. And I'll remind people that we had about 23 events in the first summer alone, and I would have classified this as a moderate event of those events. So you can see this home in the video was destroyed. All right. Thank you, Sam. Next up is Joe Leverich, again with J.E. Fuller Hydrology and Geomorphology. They have worked with us since the Schultz initially came in and did all of the flood hazard mapping for us for the 8 watersheds impacted by Schultz, and now I've carried that forward and done a tremendous amount of work with us over the years, looking at wildfire risk and those areas that are at flood risk as a result of wildfires. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe. Importantly, he will talk about the validation of the original analysis that was done of the flood threat for museum fire back in 19, and importantly, they've been through a validation process. We want to share that with you this evening. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Lucinda. Thank you, members of the Board of Supervisors and Council. My name is Joe Lovrich. I'm a local civil engineer in Flag with J.E. Fuller. And like Lucinda said, we started working on this within hours of the fire starting. When the smoke started rising, that's when we got involved. And so what I'm going to do is take you through a little tour of it. Many of you have seen a lot of this data, but I'll run through a summary of the fire, what we did, where we're at, and kind of what the current conditions are. So quick summary, as you're looking at this picture, the red outline that you see in the top of the picture is the Schultz fire footprint. The colored area on Mount Eldon, that's the museum fire. The blue lines coming down through and into Sunnyside are the flood risk zones. You also see there's camera locations, and I'll note those in a little bit. And rainfall gauges are the blue spots on the map. So, quick summary: it was a pretty small fire, about 1,961 acres. But the thing was that it burned 52% of the Spruce Avenue Wash watershed, as measured about at the city limit line. And of that, about half of it was burned severely and moderately. And that's what's really driving our post-fire flooding impacts. And that flooding comes right down into developed areas, so a lot of homes and businesses could possibly get flooded. Next slide, Sam. So the question is, what drives post-fire flooding? Well, if you think about a rainstorm before a burn, you have the tree canopies, you have all the forest litter on the ground, you have the vegetation on the ground, and when the rainfall comes, it is caught in the canopies and on the ground, and then it begins to run off. What happens in a post-fire environment is that rainfall comes down and it can splash directly against the soil. The canopy is gone above it, and so what it does is not only can more of it runs off, but more of it can run off and carry that soil with it, because there's nothing protecting the mineral dirt below the forest litter, and so that then helps create the flooding impacts downstream. So go on to the next slide. So what did we do with the post-fire modeling during the fire? What we did was we prepared a two-dimensional pre- and post-fire flood model. So we wanted to know, the two-dimensional is basically it's a type of a hydrology model where you model your whole watershed on a grid-by-grid basis, and how that rain falls on that grid and flows to the next. And so the model can track how that water runs through it. Now, we had to prepare a pre-fire model so that we knew how to adjust the parameters within the model to create our post-fire model and really understand how the runoff could increase. Another component to this is preparing a model that is based on actual events that could happen in a summertime monsoons type of event. And so what we did was we used a 1-hour storm, fast, intense 1-hour storm that's based on actual events that happened in the Schultz watershed after the Schultz fire. And then we wanted to model multiple storms, so anywhere from a 1-inch storm, 1 inch of rain depth, to 3 inches of rain depth. And what we found is that for the 2-inch rainfall, basically that was going to be our essentially baseline rainfall model for the flood risk modeling downstream. We found that the peak flows increase at Linda Vista by about 10 times. So it's very little runoff in a pre-fire. That post-fire really helps it to run off. Next slide. So what does this look like downstream? This is a flood depth map, and you can see how Cedar Avenue is across the top of the screen, and Killip School is in the bottom center. You can see how water is fairly well contained through Grandview and the Grandview channel, and then it really begins to spread out through Sunnyside. So these are the types of maps that were used to help inform how improvements or how sandbagging and what the flood risk was downstream. Go ahead. So let's, one more slide there, Sam. Let's go through some validation. So like we talked about before, there's a couple of different aspects to how we're able to monitor the flooding. There are 4 game cameras up in the watershed. This is a screen capture of what it looks like. And they take pictures periodically, and then that interval increases if a storm is coming. And with those cameras, we're able to kind of monitor the channel and make sure that we see what is flowing through there. So there's multiple other avenues though for seeing what the rainfall is in the watershed, and then these cameras. Next slide. So what we're seeing here are rainfall gauges and watersheds. So if you look at the bottom of the image there, there's the blue polygon, and that is the Spruce Avenue Wash watershed. There's gauges within that watershed. And what's important to note here is that it's basically directly adjacent to the Schultz watersheds that were impacted by the Schultz fire. You can see all the gauges that were within the Schultz fire footprint. Those rainfall gauges, you can see here are 2 installation photos that we took when we were putting these in within a week of the start of the fire. So these areas had just burned, and we were up there putting in the gauges. These are very important because these help tell us what the potential risk is downstream when a storm is coming through. Next slide. Okay, so from the National Weather Service, this is a graph showing the trends of the rainfall over the last 50 years and where we're at now. So you can see the 2019 and 2020 were record-breaking years for the driest monsoons, but the general trend over the years is that the amount of rainfall during monsoons is increasing. So based on all this, it's highly unlikely from the Weather Service that we'll see another dry monsoon like we did the previous 2 years. And so the idea is that it could be a normal, possibly above normal monsoons, and that is concerning when you look at what has happened over with the flood risk. Next slide. So what you're looking at here are 2018 through 2020 rainfall totals. There are 4 gauges. These list 4 gauges. So you can see the south gauge, the east gauge, north gauge, and west gauge. These gauges are all within the Spruce Avenue Wash watershed. The south gauge, which is right by the climbing area right next to Mount Eldon Road, if you know the area, it was installed in 2018. You can see the green. There was just over 10 inches of rainfall that monsoons. That dropped off 2019, just over 4 inches, and about 3 inches for 2020. That same trend, though we don't have, is true for the rest of the stations, though we don't have the 2018 data. This trend, though, is very similar to what was going on with the gauges on the Schultz side of the mountain as well. Next slide. So, with all that in mind, there was one event last year, July 24th, where there was a decent sized rainstorm. And so what you're looking at here is the image in the upper left of your screen is the flooding as it was coming across Mount Eldon Road at the Upper Oldham camera. And that is right at the Upper Oldham trailhead on Mount Eldon Road before it really starts switch backing up the mountain. Now, on this graph, you can see the blue line is our modeled 2-inch event. This is our 2-inch rainfall event, and that event is then scaled per how much rain we're actually modeling. What happened during the event is shown by the purple, the green, light blue, and red lines. These are the different gauges. So you can see at the very start of the storm, it was really tracking to be a pretty intense storm, and then it really tapered off. So within the first 15 minutes, there was enough rain, 0.4 inches, that we went through some of the emergency notifications, and it was looking like it was going to be a very big event. It dropped off, and that water still made it down across Linda Vista and down to Cedar. So it was. It turned out to be a pretty small storm, but what it did was it showed us that the watershed is very responsive. What we were able to do is take this data, put it back into our model, rerun our model with this rainfall, and it was showing that the model is really well within the ballpark for this smaller type of event. And it's the only one we have to calibrate on as of yet. So that's been what we were able to validate so far. Next slide. So if we look back in time and we want to see, is there a potential that this 2-inch event could happen? Well, these are totals from two different rainfall gauges on the Schultz side of the mountain. And these are 1 hour precipitation totals for 1 hour precipitation totals. And what you can see is that in 2013, there were 4 events that were basically plus or minus 2 inches of rain. Between 2011 and 2020, there were 4 events that were very close to what we're modeling as our 2-inch event. And then with the other gauge, the Upper Campbell Copeland gauge, you can see also there was a 1.7-inch event, a 1.8, a 1.9, and then a 3.8-inch event, which was that huge event in 2018. So based on this, it's showing that there is potential, and there has been events that have hit this 2-inch mark in areas, really close to the museum fire footprint. Next slide. So what does it look like right now? Next slide, Sam. Thanks. These are just a couple examples of slides from February to November of 2020 to give you an idea of how it possibly recovered last year or not. And we've done enough hiking up through the watershed. I'm sure many of you have as well. And what we're seeing is that in a lot of the moderate to high burn severity areas, which really drive the increase in flooding potential, there's just not a lot of recovery going on, and not a lot of evidence that much of the sediment and the dirt and the ash that's up there has run off already. So what we're seeing is that the potential is still there. There is some recovery happening in some of the lower severity areas, which is great, and on some of the north-facing slopes, but predominantly not enough in these areas that really contribute to the flooding. Next slide. This is, again, just a couple other pictures showing kind of what some of those steep slopes look like. And you can see by these, you imagine this going from lots of vegetation on the ground and pine needles and tree cover to this, and that's really what's driving the increased flooding. So we really feel like that potential is still there and the risk is still high. Next slide. So with that, Andy, I'll turn it over to you and open it up for questions or comments.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions of Joe while we have him with us? If not, we will keep moving through the slideshow. Sam, next slide. So consensus regarding the flood threat. Based on what we just heard from Joe, the monsoon seasons following the fire have been the lowest in recorded history, referring back to a couple slides previous. In essence, the last couple of monsoon seasons, we've referred to them as non-soons. What we have seen with the few rain events that we have gotten on the burn scar the watershed does produce debris flows that produce an increase in runoff. So a flow of 130 cubic feet per second can produce flows up to 1,300 cubic feet per second, something that we experienced in the Schultz fire and flood event with the major rain events that we received on those burn scars. The watershed, based on what folks have experienced up in the burn severity areas, the high burn severity areas, little recovery. So we do see a confirmed threat. The National Weather Service, we always track with the Weather Service and Public Works, whether it be snow season, monsoon season. They are expecting a return to a normal monsoon this year. Sam, next slide. So the combined team, and we've been meeting often, we do all believe that there is a continued risk downstream of the museum fire burn scar and a risk of post-wildfire flooding. The flood mitigation measures that were put in place after the fire in 2019 within the residential areas, the recommendation is that those measures remain in place. We are working on a maintenance effort to plan to replace degraded sandbags and ensure the drainages are free of debris. Our team just met, the joint team just met last week on those efforts, and a communication effort is being planned to communicate with the residents and the property owners. So with that, I'll turn to Lucinda, and she's going to talk a bit about that shore up effort that will be taking place. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Andy. Sam, go ahead and move to the next slide. So I want to just take a few minutes to share kind of the highlights of what's planned. The intent is to initiate this, I'll say, the mitigation shore up measures beginning in the middle of May is the goal. And it will look very similar to what was done last year in that, but just to a larger extent. As we know, sandbags, they degrade over time, and frankly, particularly with the level of UV exposure, sunlight exposure that we've had over the last 2 years, 3 years now, they have degraded, and estimates from the evaluation that was done is probably 30 to 40% of the bags have deteriorated and need to be replaced. And as was done last year, city and county crews will place bags throughout the museum flood area in the neighborhoods. They were delivered on pallets, kind of strategically placed along the streets so that they're close to the residences, and property owners and residents can avail themselves of those bags and replace those bags. In addition, the city's developing a plan in terms of how to support people with disposing of those sandbags that have deteriorated, disposing both of the sandbags and the cinder and sand. Unfortunately, out in the Schultz area, they had people had large land areas that they could dispose of those cinders, on their own land, or sand on their own land. But we have those limitations here in the city, so be working with that. We will also once again utilize the sandbag site at King Street. That will be available there. That will have bags and sand available if people want to fill their own bags as well. So that will again be available. So next slide, Sam. For those residents that are elderly or disabled and they don't have the physical ability to be able to replace their sandbags, we will be communicating the information to where to contact. The Museum Flood Call Center will be set up, and they will have the opportunity to request assistance just like they were last year as well. And we'll be working with the Arizona Conservation Corps to support those efforts, again, to support the elderly and disabled so that they're able to get their sandbags replaced and remove those that are broken and so forth. The goal of this overall effort is to have the shore up completed by the end of June, so that for the monsoon season, which I think typically the Weather Service says it starts on average, I believe it's July 9th, so that everything is completed no later than the end of June. So that is the goal. And again, we'll be initiating this effort. The goal is to initiate this effort in mid-May. So we're going to turn now to the communications. And as you'll see, the communication plan supports the mobilization by the middle of May, initiating with a joint letter from the city and the county flood control district that will share with people what this plan is and share the information that Joe shared with them as well about why it's important to continue to maintain the mitigation and that they're still at significant risk for flooding. So with that, to turn to the communications plan highlights, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Drum. Jessica?
Thanks, Lucinda. I have the honor tonight of presenting on the jointly developed City of Flagstaff and Coconino County communications plan. I will be joined in the latter slides by my counterpart at Coconino County, their Senior Communications Manager, Alexandra Fisher. So the messages the key messages that we will be highlighting in our communications to the community as we move forward. Number one is that the threat of flooding is real. We know we've heard about this extensively throughout the presentation, so I won't harp on that, but it's going to be something that we recognize our community may not be aware of. And so we will ensure that that is one of our primary messages that we're getting across to them, that this flood model that J.E. Fuller completed has shown that the risk has remained, the healing of the forest floor is not complete, and there is still great risk to our community. We also recognize that while we've been fortunate to not have any flooding, it's come because we haven't had really a monsoon so far. And so we're recognizing that in our communications and in making sure that folks understand that the risk is still very, very real and very present. Next slide, please. As Lucinda and Andy have talked about, we are looking at a normal monsoon, hopefully. We'll all keep our fingers crossed for that. But because of that, the flood risk is pretty great. And so we really want to make sure, and I think that we'll be relying on some visuals for this, but that flood mitigation really needs to be contiguous. We can't have, it's far more beneficial to have it be contiguous and not piecemeal throughout the neighborhoods that are at the most risk. So we will be working on that and making sure that our community understands that removal of one section of this flood mitigation can compromise the overall effectiveness of the system. We're also going to be encouraging our constituents to sign up for emergency notifications and please get flood insurance. So those will be the key messages. As it's noted in the title, those will also be communicated in both English and in Spanish. And with that, on the next slide, I will turn it over to Alexandra Fisher I've told you the what we're going to tell them, and she's going to explain the how.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jessica. Yes, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about some of those key messages, but really important is where we're going to be placing them. So we'll start with a couple and then you'll hear about a few more as we continue through these slides. But really important for all of our communications certainly is social media. We know it's very effective at getting the word out there. However, it is a bit more broad. So we'll be targeting our messaging appropriately because it is a bit more broad, but we'll be using both the City of Flagstaff and Coconino County social media channels. The county really relies on Facebook and Instagram as well as Twitter, so we'll be sure to be publishing really about fire season and the threat of flooding. And then we also have a Facebook live show called In the Coconino, which provides weekly or bi-weekly updates rather about the news in the county. And actually last Friday, we had the pleasure of having Supervisor Horstman and Deputy County Manager Lucinda Andriani join to talk about both fire season with actually Wes Deason, our emergency management director, and then really what can happen after wildfire, which is that post-wildfire flooding. So we were able to touch a bit about the importance of sandbags, and we'll continue to have those Facebook Live shows, whether it's in the Coconino or a different version, sort of a standalone show about this topic exactly. Also important are digital channels in general, both using the city and the county's channels, which include things like our website and our internal and external newsletters. So we can go to the next slide if you don't mind. Thank you. While print is not something we would leverage for every communication plan that we have, it's certainly important for this communication plan. And again, noting Spanish and English versions of all of these items that we're discussing. In terms of print, and Lucinda mentioned this, the joint letter to property owners, which we'll talk about the science and why it's important to continue mitigating. We also produced a museum flood guide last year that will be updated this year. This is produced actually both in print and a digital version just to increase the reach. And this really talks more about what are the mitigation projects that we have ongoing, some more graphic elements to show, how to properly stack sandbags and that kind of thing. And then the advisory is really more of a legal document that we're required to send as the flood control district. So you can proceed. Thank you so much. We'll be leveraging traditional media, again, in both Spanish and English. So that includes things like radio, so Sunnyside utilizing our Spanish language speakers, and CAF for examples. We also intend to do some joint press releases, again, to be reaching a more broad print and traditional media audience, and then pitching as needed to the Arizona Daily Sun, since we know that reaches such a key audience here. In terms of outreach, that's going to be another really important piece of our communication strategy and plan. So that would include both a public virtual meeting as well as meetings in the street. And this is an image here of previous meetings in the street. And we know that those are very effective. So we intend to do those in the evening hours, perhaps when folks aren't working, gives residents and property owners an opportunity to speak with our supervisors or whoever else we may decide would be the best fit from a leadership perspective to really answer those questions in a very personalized way. So you can go to the next. Thank you. So this really kind of sums up both the messages and the timing of the various channels that we intend to deploy as part of this communications plan. So you can see end of April, we already had our first Facebook Live show on this topic. And then as you go throughout the summer, you'll see when we intend to send the joint letter, when we intend in May, the second week of May approximately, to have that joint public virtual meeting, again, continuing the messaging around mitigation, the importance, the science, that this is the science-based communications plan, or rather a science-based decision to continue mitigating. Sharing sandbag restock information will be incredibly important, as well as those meetings in the street as we get later into May. And then beginning into June, we'll be sharing again that print and digital copy of the museum flood guide, and then really ongoing throughout the summer, monitoring the monsoon season and deploying messages as needed. With that, I'd welcome any questions that folks may have.
All right, fantastic presentation so far. Questions? And I'm not seeing them at this point. And we have the opportunity at the end to do follow-up as well. Oh, question from Jim McCarthy. Oh, we got to let Jim up there.
Hi, Ryan. Matt Ryan.
That's right.
Hey, Matt and Alexandra. I was going to ask a question. Have we considered putting a note in people's water bills? Because that's something that they get for sure. But then I did see on the slide that you're going to be sending out letters to the affected neighborhoods. So maybe that would be redundant. But just a thought. Thank you.
Good suggestion. I mean, the more that we can communicate, the better. So good suggestion.
All right. And then I have Geronimo up, Supervisor Vasquez with a comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, as we're looking over, first of all, good job on the presentation, and I had the opportunity to go with the county staff to see some of the museum fire, the fire scar, and get a tour and whatnot, and see some of the mitigation efforts. And I was wondering about the Sunnyside mitigation efforts with the Dorotha corridor, if there's what's going on with those barriers, if there's any plans to do anything with that corridor from Cedar to Ponderosa Park.
And is that Andy or? Or is that
I'm not
Lucinda?
sure who would be best to answer that. I'm just curious because I know that that area, even though it's in District 2, is city jurisdiction. So I was wondering what the city's doing on that corridor. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Oh, go ahead, Andy. I was going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, good evening, Supervisor. The concern we have with the Dorothy corridor is we know some sort of flood mitigation is needed because of the channel that runs through that corridor, and what we're working on is how do we keep it in that channel without extending outside the boundaries of that channel. So Ed is going to address it in subsequent slides in terms of potential future projects. So maybe we'll just, Ed Shank in our stormwater group. So maybe we'll just address that further on in the presentation. And Supervisor, if you don't get your question answered, we'll work to get that answered for you by the end of the presentation or later this evening.
Great, thank you. The other question I had about it is kind of related to the same thing is they're building a new school at Killip and that's where all the water drained. Is there any kind of mitigation plan for in the event we get a flood while there's the construction at Killip? Thank you. And again, that you don't have to answer it right now, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I want to see what the plan is.
Chair Ryan, this is Christopher Tressler, County Engineer, and I plan to cover Killip in on the next slide, the next two slides.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. So after, looks like you're done your questions right now, Geronimo, and we have potential follow-up there. We have Council Member Shimoni out there. Adam?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone who's presented. Alex, a special thank you to you. I love the Coconino video series that you're doing. I think that's so great. And quite frankly, I'm a bit jealous at the city. But regardless, I wanted just to say I like the outreach plan. I like everything we've discussed up until now. Just a quick comment, Alex, on the videos. Just a thought, maybe in the title or in the description area, just to like bullet points, the talking points of that video. I think I was just looking at some of them and they just kind of had that generic Coconino title. It might be helpful just to have some more substance so people know what the video is really diving into before clicking play. Just a thought. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work.
All right. Great comments and advice. Okay, at this point, it looks like, and we have more presentations, so we'll have more opportunity for comments or questions, but just minding the clock also. Why don't we go ahead and proceed for the next piece, and we can always come back to questions of areas covered as well.
Right, thanks, Chair Ryan, members of the board and City Council. I'm Christopher Tressler. I serve as the county engineer. I also serve as the flood control district engineer. And Sam, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the flood mitigation campaign that was undertaken in 2019 immediately following the start of the fire. We contracted with J.E. Fuller, and at the request of the city of Flagstaff, the flood control district mobilized to help understand the flood risk downstream of the fire, any potential flood risk given our experience with Schultz and what we know in engineering and geology related to the impacts of wildfire and what can happen hydraulically downstream of these things. And so very quickly, we were able to identify a flood hazard area that included parts of a small portion of county jurisdiction in Mount Lebanon in the States and Lockett Ranches. And then it included upper part of Paradise and the Grandview neighborhood and then down into Sunnyside. And so we partnered with the city of Flagstaff and other engineering firms and conservation groups and state fire groups to help us deploy flood mitigation in the form of sandbags and Jersey barriers. And we mitigated some of the flood risk to approximately 400 homes and about 35 businesses within that flood hazard area. Now, as Supervisor Vasquez has pointed out, that somewhat vulnerable in the flood hazard area is Killip School. And it's recently gone under construction to expand, or actually maybe it's better to call it's a complete rebuild. But those Jersey barriers have been removed to a large degree upstream of the school. And so the City of Flagstaff, the Flood Control District, and the engineering firm and contractor, the FUSD contractor and engineer are working with us to look at flood mitigation measures that can remain in place while construction happens to continue to mitigate the flood risk there. So Sam, let's go to the next slide. And Ed Shank, actually from the City of Flagstaff, is going to take it from here and talk more about the flood mitigation campaign.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. This is Ed Shank at the Stormwater section within the City of Flagstaff. So maintenance in 2019 included the removal of trees and debris from Spruce Wash, as well as several alleyways throughout Sunnyside. This was done by the county, the city. We also had, I believe, a prison crew that helped the Public Works section, as well as ACE and ACCC. The county and the city both had many public meetings throughout Sunnyside, Grandview, and Paradise. The larger meetings were Coconino High, and we had smaller meetings that were actually staged on the streets. Actually, I think one of the earlier slides, well, this slide also has a picture of Lucinda here over on Paradise. And these meetings were to inform residents of mitigation strategies, to educate the public, and also to allow them to share their concerns as well. Next slide, please. So in 2020, our mitigation refresh, both the county and the city placed sandbags in areas in Sunnyside where we did find UV degradation, or areas where they were trampled or moved. So we did that with coordination with the residents. And all concrete and water barriers were checked and refilled if they were refillable. We worked with conservation crews and United Way to restore mitigation in areas where residents could not do it themselves, whether they're elderly or disabled. Next slide. The United Way of Northern Arizona established a call center while the county call center managed COVID-19 response. So we had a switch there last year. ACE, American Conservation Experience, helped out with 32 elderly and disabled residents in the flood area, including 700 sandbags placed by those crews. The ACE crews cleaned quite a bit of drainage within that area. So areas that either had new debris, whether it might be trash or illegal fill, or vegetation. We also had the City of Flagstaff Wildland Fire Crew help out over a long weekend, clearing between Paradise down to Cedar. 5,000 sandbags and pallets were staged throughout the area. We still have quite a bit of sandbags at the county public works yard, which is a good thing. And the museum flood area, through there for the residents' convenience. So the residents could actually pull out sandbags as needed and replace them as they went through. Next slide. All right, so we'll talk about some of the long-term mitigation efforts that the city is either designing or implementing as part of the museum fire response. So I'm sorry I have a whole lot of words here, but sometimes it's easier just to try to go through as a list instead of show every project. So during the fire, as the fire was still burning, Water Services paid $112,000 roughly. That was delivered by Community Development to protect some of the water utilities and other utility crossings in Spruce Wash that could be impacted by channel scour if there was a large flow or debris event. So these are 7 cross vein rock weirs that were installed. So essentially these are large rock structures that are buried in the channel. So you can barely see them once they're installed. But what they do is prevent the channel from scouring lower when there's a large flow event. So with scour, we're worried about utilities being exposed and then damaged by debris. We also installed debris bollards at the Linda Vista and Dortha culverts or inlets. And these are typical concrete-filled metal bollards that would catch any large debris that might come down from a storm. So if we have any large trunks or pieces of trees, we want to capture that before it gets into the culvert. We also delivered an upsizing of the Linda Vista culvert. So this was a little under $300,000 from the Stormwater Contingency Fund and delivered by our Community Improvement Program, or CD as well. So that was completed early last year. Following that, we dredged near the culvert of Cedar Avenue and reconfigured the channel to allow for the full capacity of the channel going under Cedar. So when we upsized Linda Vista, we took it from roughly a culvert that could take about 180 cubic feet per second to a culvert that now can take 325 cubic feet per second. When we do that, we have to make sure that the rest of the channel downstream is not negatively impacted. So we're not moving flooding from one area to another area. So we're not flooding somebody else's house because we're protecting somebody's. So when we do that, it's called a no adverse impact analysis. When we do that, we need to start improving areas downstream that are deficient. One of these was at Cedar Avenue. So that was delivered by Stormwater and the Public Works section or division here at the city. We've also done annual channel and stormwater conveyance cleaning. And that's been done by a number of groups that have been mentioned already, as well as using our water services collections crew during the COVID time, or early COVID-19, to help clean out some of the catch basins through Sunnyside. So our collections team in March, April, and May were not able to do their sewer work because of the risk of getting COVID from sewage. So we were using them for stormwater cleaning at that time. We also installed, with the help of Jay Fuller, a new flood alert gauge on Spruce Wash. So this one's down near Route 66. So it's actually past the majority of Sunnyside, or all of the Sunnyside neighborhood. And this gauge is to monitor the impacts of water as it goes through Sunnyside, and then may impact the BNSF, Railroad Bridge, Route 66, or areas downstream. Next slide, please. So we have quite a bit of ongoing or planned in terms of mitigation. What I just presented was stuff that has been completed in the last 2 years. One of the questions is, what are we doing in the channel between Cedar and further downstream? So we do have a plan to dredge and reconfigure the channel between Cedar and Dorothy Inlet. And this would be to allow more capacity into that Dorothy Inlet and allow for some of the sandbags to be removed with or replaced with longer term mitigations. There's also a potential that could allow potentially the opening of that Dorothy Road. We still have to do a little more modeling with that. So at the moment, this is under design. SWY is our consultant for the design for this. And then what we will use in the new fiscal year, once the design is complete, is a stormwater reserve fund to pay for that reconfiguration of the channel. Killip School. So as been mentioned, Killip School is a focal point, if you will, for some of the water that may flow through based on a museum fire event. And as we've already talked about, it is being reconfigured or scraped, and a new school is being installed. So we are in the design phase with FUSD and the county to figure out a regional flood detention facility that may fit within that footprint of the school. So what we're seeing, we're about roughly 90% design. What we're seeing is we might be able to fit in a regional detention facility that could move flood water into a concentrated area within what would be a soccer field or softball field area, and then meter that water back into the stormwater channels and piping after the event. So that's still in the design phase. Fairly complex because of the different partners and organizations involved. But once that design is complete, we will likely fund that with stormwater deferred funding. So we will actually move some of our CIP projects back so that we can get this funded and moving as soon as possible. We do a smaller project. There's a Foots Low Water Crossing Armoring and Risk Mitigation Project. This is down near Route 66. That Foots Low Water crossing of Spruce Wash has some issues that will need to be armored. That'll be paid for by stormwater and also by a FEMA grant. And then farther downstream, we do have the same issues we're talking about with utility crossings and the potential for scour and damage. So there is a small grant from the FEMA HMGP grant process that will help the city pay for armoring and reconfiguration of the channel. So this would be fairly far downstream. This is down near 4th and Butler. We are in the process, actually the city council approved it. We are in the process of buying a small electric mini dozer, and this is to help clean out some of those box culverts that cannot be easily cleaned. So for a good example, the Cedar Avenue culvert is roughly 42 to 46 inches tall. You can't get a normal dozer or skid steer in there. So this small electric mini dozer will be able to get in and clean that culvert as well as other culverts throughout the city. We are also working on upgrading the existing flood alert gauge on Mount Eldon Road. So removing the pressure transducer and changing that to a non-contact type transducer. So this would actually be a downward looking radar unit. And this would allow us to measure flow during these events where a pressure transducer, which is in the channel, could be damaged or buried by debris or heavy sedimentation. And of course, we at the city and within stormwater, both stormwater and public works, continue coordination with the flood control district for the flood director duties that we have during the monsoon seasons. Next slide, Sam. Just going to go through some quick photos here just to show you what we've been up to. So the one on the left is a picture of those crossvane weirs that were installed right after the fire, 7 of them. The picture on the right is a picture from last year, reconfiguring the Cedar Avenue crossing. So removing some of the illegal fill and upsizing the channel. Next slide. The photo on the left is the new pipe. So the new corrugated metal pipe that was going in at Linda Vista. So we went from 1 barrel to 2 barrels. So this is the new barrel that was going in. And then on the right, you can see an example of those debris bollards that could trap some of the larger debris so that we do not have to, or do not have a catastrophic failure of a culvert due to large debris. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Christopher.
Hey, Ed, before you go anywhere, so you touched on the Dortha Inlet, and just to be clear, that's the area from Cedar to Dortha and that channel, and that I think Supervisor Vasquez was asking about, and City Stormwater's identified that project and is getting ready to move it to the next phase. But it's such an important project because it provides a huge benefit downstream. The more water we can keep in the City of Flagstaff stormwater system, the underground pipes, the less water that'll be flowing out through the Sunnyside neighborhood, right? I mean, is that the first inlet, Ed, downstream of the fire?
No, that's not the first inlet, but that's a very good point. So the more that we can keep in the channel and the more that we can keep in the pipe infrastructure, obviously the better. The more it spreads out, the more, the harder it is to mitigate, the more likelihood there's going to be a gap in a sandbag or jersey barrier or whatnot. And then just the logistical difficulty of the cleanup. So even if it doesn't get into people's houses, it's still quite a bit of difficulty clearing out the roads and whatnot. So the first inlet or the first culvert is at Linda Vista, and that is the one that's been upsized already. The second one is at Cedar, which has already had some channel reconfiguration around it. And then Dortha is the major one. So from Dortha, you have a 60-inch tunnel. So if we can get as much water as we can into that 60-inch tunnel that goes underneath the rest of Sunnyside, we can prevent a lot of damage and a lot of issues. So the more we can keep in the channel, the better. whatever goes over top at Dortha, we're going to really try to get that channeled, or not channeled, we're going to try to get that focused into the above ground channel. So if you're not familiar with the Sunnyside neighborhood, right at Dortha, there's the 60-inch inlet, but then right on the other side of Dortha, so just downstream, there is actually an alleyway or an easement that still has an above ground surface channel. It can't take as much water as the 60-inch inlet, but it can take a fair amount. And we can focus that down to Arroyo Seco, where there's another inlet into that 60-inch tunnel. Or if that does not work, part of that KILLIP design, so part of that design for that regional detention facility would be to take any of that overflow or excess and move it from that surface channel and then get that into that detention basin so that we are not spreading the flow out through the neighborhood.
All right, thanks, Ed. I didn't mean to belabor that, but that's such an important one. Supervisor Ryan, I see Supervisor Vasquez is asking a question. Is it right if we pause, or do you want us to finish this section?
Actually, it looks like you're almost done looking at the presentation. Is that correct? If you can hold off, Geronimo, we can definitely get the follow up there. Go ahead, Christopher.
All right, hey, Sam, let's go to this last slide. So some of the long-term mitigation projects that the county's undertaken already, immediately below the fire, the burn scar. In 2020, the county used some RAC funds to complete an alluvial fan stabilization project. This doesn't decrease peak flows, but in a sense, but it does decrease the amount of sediment and debris that bulks up the flow and flows downstream, potentially plugging some of these inlet structures and culverts. We also completed a project to clean out a small earthen basin there in the Mount Ellen Estates neighborhood. And we're about to go to construction. We procured the contractor. We have Board of Supervisor or Board of Director approval. And we'll be just here in the next few weeks, we'll be going to construction, a more significant project with the Mount Ellen Estates neighborhood to help provide a level of flood mitigation and improve drainage features through that neighborhood. And then with the city of Flagstaff, and we're evaluating that area now just upstream of Paradise and through Paradise. There's at the top of the Paradise, the road, there really is no channel there, and there's Jersey barriers in place. And we're looking at more opportunities in that area for alluvial fan stabilization, spread some water out, get debris to fall out. Like we were just saying before, as much sediment and debris as we can keep up in the forested areas and away from these important inlets, the better the downstream neighborhoods can fare. So the next slide, Sam, I think that's it for me and Ed, and we'll turn it back to Andy and Lucinda or answer any questions.
Check in with Andy and Lucinda real quick. Do you want to do a conclusion before we go into questions here?
Thank you, Christopher and Ed. Very well done presentation. Also, thank you, Brett Peterson in Capital, Scott Overton in Streets, and Christopher, you and your team for all of the engineering work. It was, while these events are never fun to deal with, it's always good to see engineers working together and coming up with projects and solutions to community issues and problems. So well done. And Supervisor or Chairman Ryan, if I see we have a question from our Board of Supervisor Vasquez, and yeah.
All right.
And, yeah.
Last question on this, I promise. So the Dortha corridor is the long-term plan to leave Dortha shut down, or eventually is that going to be opened up again? Because it does disrupt traffic flow in the Sunnyside, the way that neighborhood is built. That takes away an important artery, and it forces you to have to either go 7th Avenue or Cedar to get around in that central area or corridor. What are the long-term plans for that for Dortha? Thank you.
I think I probably can answer that. So it was never the intention of either the county or the city to close Dorotha forever. Obviously, it was a hard decision. It has a huge impact on the neighborhood. So part of our design that we have with our consultant with SWI, one of their goals is how can we reopen that road responsibly. So I haven't seen the full design because it has not come out yet, but we bounced around quite a bit. Brett Peterson with our community improvement, as well as several of us here in Water Services, made sure that it was very well known that is one of the goals, and not just flood mitigation, but also making sure that we have flood mitigation that will allow us, from an engineering perspective, to reopen that road. So what does that look like? I can't tell you since I haven't seen the design, but we did bounce back and forth a few different ideas of reconfiguring that road in one way or another, where we can reopen it, remove the Jersey barriers, and still push any excess flow that cannot get into that 60-inch culvert across the road into that alleyway, into that surface area, without changing flow patterns that might negatively impact anybody that would not have been flooded if we had kept those Jersey barriers in place. But that is definitely high on our list, and it's one of the design components that we asked for.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the answer.
All right. And I'm waiting to see if we queue up questions or comments from the council members, but Lucinda, did you have a follow-up as well?
Just want to say thank you, appreciate the time, and really look forward to partnering with the community to ensure that we've got this mitigation in place for this monsoon season, and really pleased with the partnership with the city. I think things are moving in a great direction, and we're doing what we can to mitigate. So thank you.
All right. Just, while I'm looking and seeing if we did get any, and we can move on afterwards. If not, just a note, really appreciate using the science for what it is. It helps the area, helps y'all focus in appropriate areas. It still is a potential threat, and you can't fully control these. As we all know, emergencies are kind of organized chaos if we get it. We hope we don't, but there is the potential. So important to have that community communication, that you're ahead of it on what to do. So really appreciate it from that perspective on what you're proposing. A reinforcement for people that live within the corridor, flood insurance, so important ahead of time. So definitely that public awareness. No matter what, the cooperation between the city and county has just been wonderful. Really love just seeing everybody bring in their expertise and focusing it well. Do see a note of Councilmember Shimoni, and I'm sure the other council members and supervisors, just thanking everybody for all the good work that's been done associated with this. One last call to council and board members, and if not, I'll go ahead and I'll tend to the clock. And I'll also note, I saw Jessica Drum that came over to the city too. Are you guys recruiting people from the county? We love watching you guys grow through your careers and appreciate all the great work that you do for the city. So wonderful. Let's see. Next item that we have is the discussion on the coordination of the Flagstaff Regional Plan 2045. I would suspect that we have Sarah Dechter coming up here, and there she is doing the presentation. You all may have seen Sarah out there at some workshop or another, if not another presentation. So look forward to this. And noting primary activities in the city, I'm sure you're going to go over this, Sarah. But it also, in the county areas, it is an amendment to our comprehensive plan. So very important in that way as well. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Chairman Ryan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Dechter. I am the Comprehensive and Neighborhood Planning Manager for the City of Flagstaff. My counterpart at the county is usually your senior planner, Melissa Shaw, who tonight is working hard at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So I think Lucinda Andrani is probably going to be the person to help me answer questions that may be more county specific. But I want to chat a little further tonight. I know both the Board of Supervisors and the City Council have had individual presentations on the fact that it's time to update the regional plan. And we'd like to go over a couple things that we think would be worth at least starting a discussion. And a few of these we'd hope that you can come to some agreement on tonight. To first of all, and importantly, endorse that you want the city and county staff to be working together to continue in our tradition of completing a regional plan and not just a standalone general plan for the city. We'd like to create some shared expectations on what regional public participation looks like, and we'll go over some details from our public participation plan that was attached to your agenda. We'd also like to ask for some direction to staff directly that you want us to begin public engagement this fall. That's what we're proposing, at least. Some generalized discussion that we can touch back in on later for the public staff and our appointed and elected officials who will all be participating in this process together. And then we'd also like to discuss some early questions and curiosities about how we would go about with the shared process endorsing and approving a regional plan. We have some lessons learned from the last time. So what is a regional plan, or maybe better, why do we call this document a regional plan? Well, this plan is the general for the city staff. So it follows the state statutes under Title IX for cities. And then so under that statute, we have to adopt, the council has to adopt every 10 years the regional plan and then send it to voters to be ratified. We also, in the city, use it to support our land use decision, our policy making. The city of Flagstaff has opted into a 100-year water supply designation by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And then we use it in conjunction with our counterparts at the county and metro plan and mountain line to make transportation planning projections and assumptions and to track our progress in moving towards our transportation goals and policies. For Coconino County, this document is an amendment to the County Comprehensive Plan. The County Comprehensive Plan, as the board knows, doesn't have a land use map. And so for the Flagstaff area, the future growth illustration serves as that land use map. The county then also takes the plan and works on area plans that are sort of at a similar level but provide more detail than the regional plan does. The difference in the county is that the legal method of adopting the regional plan is for the Board of Supervisors to adopt a major plan amendment. So it's a slightly different process. That's why we're going to talk about endorsement and approval so early, is because setting those clear expectations can make the whole process more successful. So the boundary, some of mine, I may not have fully replaced this. Some of my numbers here are a little wound up with some other text, so the area, the square here looks maybe random about what's the shape of this area and how did we decide that orange line is the regional plan boundary? Well, that's actually the metro plan boundary, and that's part of why we do our projecting and our data management all the way out to this boundary. And the city of Flagstaff would probably be investing in that level of data management, even if the county weren't a partner on the regional plan, because it supports our understanding and work in our transportation network. So Belmont, in the county, Belmont, Kachina Village, Mountain Air, Fort Valley, Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, and parts of Winona all are inside this regional plan boundary, as are Camp Navajo, part of it at least, and then thousands of acres of the Coconino National Forest and our national monuments, including Walnut Canyon and Sunset Crater. So we've been meeting, staff has been meeting for maybe about 8 or 7 months to talk through a lot of things about the last regional plan update and how we'd like to move forward with this one. When I came to the city, I came on board right after the council had adopted the regional plan and was sending it to the ballot. So my first task was to figure out what was in this document because I didn't write it, and I hadn't really been part of the process except as a participant. And so what I brought to the table was a process that probably the fire staff's very familiar with, which was I conducted an after-action review. And an after-action review includes a couple key questions. What was supposed to happen? What actually happened? What went well? What did not go well? And what should we do next time? And it's always a process in which you do that with no judgments and no expectations that there's blame to go around anywhere, but just an opportunity to learn important lessons from an experience like building a regional plan. So I conducted interviews with the community advisory committee members who elected to meet with me, and many members of staff who had their many hours of their work time spent on the regional plan. From that, I gathered a couple guiding principles that I sort of wrote on my whiteboard. And as we've been working on the general plan, from our general plan standpoint, creating specific plans over the last few years, we've been refining them. So we propose these kind of as our process guiding principles. The first one is we need the right people and the right agenda and the right timing in the process. So that gets us away from maybe having a one-size-fits-all group that we're trying to do everything with, as opposed to having a lot of conversations that are tailored and useful and time well spent. That was probably one of the things I heard the most from participants who were not city employees, was that they always wondered if the time they spent was really well spent. There were quorum issues, there were delays, there were a hard time tying up topics. Those things came up again and again with the interviews we did. And that's because this is a very complex, very broad area to be doing outreach for and getting information and data put together for. And then trying to then solve complex issues at that broad scale is another really challenging part of the process. Another key thing was to encourage from beginning to end that the experts and the public work together. The public are experts, of course, in their own way. They know their backyard very well. They don't always know the data that is about the geography they live, about the areas, why they have some services and not others, how things work together within a city and within the surrounding suburban and rural areas. There was also always a need for outside facilitation that wasn't funded very early in the process, but later on was funded. And so that's another key piece that we'll have to work on, the timing of when outside facilitation is important and how to identify and support that process. Another issue that really came up not at the beginning or right after in those after action reviews, but in the years since, and I think very obviously in the last year or two, is that really there was not much work done on equity and inclusion in the process. Not because we didn't want an inclusive process and just to include everyone, but we didn't actually dive into some of the information to say, well, what are the issues that keep us from achieving equity and inclusion, and how could this document provide help in moving in the right direction? And I think that's a key piece that I've heard from both our conversations with the City Council and with the Board of Supervisors that you want us to have more focus on this time. And another piece, which we'll talk about in detail, is that there was a lack of clear expectations for endorsement. And so we sort of had a moment where the city and the county actually adopted slightly different plans after working together on it for 5 years. And that is a story we'd like to prevent from happening again by doing a better job of making those things clear up front and having those conversations with both the board and the council. So the document you received has a draft public participation process. That process is not every single thing we might possibly do, but it's really meant to be a framework on which we can scaffold other opportunities that might come up along the way that we can't foresee, and also one in which would involve continued evaluation. So every phase of this process will ask some good evaluation questions that we'll set up front. And if we get to a point where we don't feel we've achieved them, we'll go back and start working on how we incorporate that either into the next phase of the process or in some piece that we're doing alongside this process. So I'm going to go over those in a little more detail. The phase we'd like to start this year is to work on getting people curious and gaining some understanding about the region, about regional planning, and about how the Regional Plan 2030 has done. How much of those goals and objectives have we achieved? What's changed? What kind of expectations did we have that went unmet? What have we done really well at? We'd also like to start this early outreach with the idea of equity and also the idea of making it a process that allows for some creativity. I'm a very data management focused person, even though I do a lot of public engagement. I'm very people focused too. But I really like sharing rich, complex data and getting people involved in it. And so the nerds flock to me, and that's great. That's what I love, is having those nerdy conversations. But some people learn and process information visually or auditorially that is very different. And so what we want is to actually we're going to use some money from the Beautification and Public Art Commission at the city to bring artists into the process at the beginning in hope of creating some excitement and also creating some visual touchstones before we dive into some of the most sticky issues that tend to get very emotional responses from the members of our community, because we all care very deeply about our community. And then, of course, Jessica Drum will need me to say we will definitely provide a media plan to both she and Eric Peterson. The techniques that we would use in the next phase, which we've called What's Possible, What's the Vision, is more along the lines of maybe what you see in a traditional collaborative process. Though we haven't quite nailed down which technique is the best fit, we might do that after we've done some of this initial outreach and we think about who's come to the table and who's missing and what else we think we need to do. We kind of want to have those evaluation questions answered and then really build the process in more detail. But we would also hope that this would be our opportunity to start recruiting a diverse advisory committee. One of the things you'll notice that's different than what was done under the previous regional plan update is we are not proposing to form an advisory committee at the beginning. We're proposing to conduct outreach, create relationships, start asking questions together, start figuring out if we're asking the right questions together before an advisory committee is formed. And then that advisory committee's main objective would be to take that rich, data-driven, public-driven, and community-driven information, and then the creative-driven information, and to create a plan with us. So that's hopefully the process we'd like to see moving forward. So when an advisory committee is put together, we haven't quite talked yet about how to appoint an advisory committee or what that might look like. What they would do is start an iterative process with staff of working on chapters, looking at the summaries of public comments, talking about how to build consensus, how to do the outreach that helps create buy-in, because remember, in the city, this has to go to the ballot, so it needs a majority of people who vote on the special election in the city to actually vote in favor of it. We also probably have to work out some issues about whether we're doing concurrent or consecutive legal reviews. Sterling just perked up on me, I'm sure, when he's thinking about this. When I did an after-action review with the previous city attorney, she told me that it took her almost 6 months to conduct a legal review of the regional plan. It's a very complex and big document that covers a lot of topics. So we need to make sure that that is built into the process or ongoing during this phase 3. However, the city and county attorney want to pull that together. And so then we also, during this period, have either a 60 or a 90 public comment period so that the draft goes out and people can see it and we get those written comments on the first draft. Phase 4 is when we get into plan adoption. This is our suggested course of adoption, but there are actually a lot of options of how we might do this and we definitely need an enormous amount of feedback from the board and council on this. First, we think the advisory committee, after revising the plan for the public comments received during the public comment period, should endorse it and say publicly, we support this plan. We believe this meets all the needs of the city and county for the planning area. Then we would like to hold a joint retreat to review the document with the city and county planning and zoning commissions. That could also be a joint retreat with the board of supervisors and the city council. It might take 2 or 3 days to work through the document. It's a pretty hefty thing. Think of it like the budget, but for 10 years, and also doing projections out for 100 years. So it definitely has that rich piece that says a retreat would be a very appropriate tool to make sure that the work session is productive and that we're really able to follow all the threads through the document and think through all the contingencies that might pop to mind on what if this happens, or what if this happens, or what did we actually consider this, and make sure all those questions are clear in everyone's mind before moving forward. So then the City and Planning and Zoning Commission and the County Planning and Zoning Commission will both need to hold public hearings. Then either in some order, the question we have at the bottom is, should that be a joint public hearing? You don't have to answer all these questions tonight, but we're sprinkling them in there for ideas that maybe you'll hear from peers in other places, or maybe you have a preference just looking at this today. But then the City Council and the Board of Supervisors will need to hold separate public hearings. The city's process needs to have an adoption date and then set a ballot date. The Board of Supervisors could hold their public hearings concurrent to the City Council ones and hold their decision until the ballot is actually done. That's one way to do it. There's lots of other legal ways to do it. You could wait to hold the Board of Supervisors public hearing until after the ballot date has passed. What we'd like to avoid happening is that the document adopted by the city and the document adopted by the county are different. That is where we have been for the last few years. And so the county's been keeping a copy of the regional plan that was actually the first public hearing draft, and the city has the draft that the voters voted on in the ballot, which was changed in many ways over a 5-month period where it went through multiple public hearings with the City Council. So far, the resources available for this process are that the city has a contribution from BPAC specifically, which is our Beautification and Public Art Commission, specifically to include art and artists in phase 1. We also have $80,000 set aside for consulting assistance tied to the data analysis portion of this, and for help setting up success in scenario planning, which was a big successful part of the previous regional plan update. We also have about $7,000 for public notices and advertising within the city. The county is committed to providing full staff support, and maybe Lucinda can answer questions about this, for facilitating the process and public participation. They will need to be requesting money for public notices and advertising, and they have not yet determined how they would like to fund data gathering and analysis. Though for both of these cases, we are already meeting and looking together at how the funding that the city has put aside could be leveraged for grants that could fund other parts of the work. So with that, this is just a teaser list to remind you of a couple of the things we'd hope you might want to chat about during this conversation. And with that, any questions or comments?
Oh, there you go. Just a little regional plan that we're going to work on. No, actually, it's a great opportunity as this rolls around, and it is a good chance to start to provide input on some of Sarah's questions. As noted by Sarah, these things, they don't happen overnight. It takes a little time, a little bit more conversation, sometimes jointly, sometimes independently, just to get a feel for where we are. And just as a point of note, we haven't had a full opportunity. We haven't finished our budget components. So some of the questions related to what does the county do? Definitely we have manpower beyond that. We still have to take time to take a look at those pieces with that. So I'll pause for a minute to see input. Actually, probably would be easier, Sarah, if you probably put one of those, put up your little posting there of areas
Sure.
of, and then, the general guidance that you're seeking. So public participation, obviously, the way we've done it in the past, I would assume we're probably going to go into is we're a very engaged county and city in terms of activity and inclusion of public. It depends upon, you have various phases that you need to go through. So I think that would be an evolving conversation that we would have at that. But I think, usually we have council members and board members that probably want to comment on this piece. So I'm pausing for a minute, see who would queue up. Look at that pause. There we go.
I did see that Sterling noted that the legal review will take a lot of time.
Yeah. That's right, but I like how you have the working together. Looks like the mayor would like to comment. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I just want to thank you, Ms. Decter, for all your work on this. And I know we had a good discussion about this just a couple weeks ago, and I really like our plan for public participation, and definitely is adapting to the new age in 2021. And I appreciate the multimodal ways that people are learning and engaging that you recognize, from visualizations to the numbers like you and I like, and it's excellent. So I know we are in good hands as this evolves. So
thank you.
Other comments? Well, we can wander through it a little bit. When to begin? Obviously, we need to get rolling pretty soon on this, as soon as possible, but it also is, staff capacity is always a question associated with that and how you have it aligned. I know you've been working with our staff on when and how to program. Our guys are positioning themselves well for that. And I'm not sure if Lucinda wants to comment on that. I'm sorry.
This is Lena.
Oh, okay. So Lena, let me hold off just for a second on that. I have Councilmember McCarthy, Jim, and then I'll follow up with you, Lena.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'll just note that the last time we did this, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it took an awful lot of time, as Mr. Solomon pointed out, and a lot of legal time, but a lot of time for everybody. I guess one of my concerns is on public participation. It seems that we have so many conflicting goals. Like on one hand, we hate big buildings. On the other hand is we want infill, we want more housing. And sometimes those different opinions can be in conflict with each other. As far as when to begin, I think we have begun, and that's good because it does take a lot of time. And I also agree that the schedule should be set up so that, as Sarah's already pointed out, that we can hopefully end up with a document that both the county and the city can agree to. That may not happen, but I think it definitely should be one of our highest priority goals. So those are some of my comments. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Fowler, Lena. Where did you go? There you are.
Thank you.
Up.
I apologize. I cut in the last time. I would like to see more people included in this process. The last time we went through this process, it seems like when we work on these documents, we're calling on the usual people. And when you walk into the room, it's the same people in all those rooms. And so I like to see a more diverse community input rather than the same people. And I think that the Flagstaff in our region, our county, it's very diverse. And it needs to be reflected in our plans, also in the voices that we hear, that we listen to, and hear all perspective. I like to see more of that. When I was at one of the meetings, towards the final of, or at some point, people didn't understand when I said that there is no color. I don't see color in this plan. And it was the region, the richness that we have here. I didn't see that in the last, and I don't see it in the last Flagstaff plan. It's because we limit ourselves as to who we want to listen to, who we want to hear from. So thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Looks like we have Councilmember Shimoni. Adam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Sarah, for your presentation and your hard work on this. You know, Supervisor Fowler, I really appreciate your comments, and I am right there with you in trying to get more diverse voices at the table in our government processes. And I think that with Sarah working on this, we really have the right person doing the job. I think Sarah's done a great job with the Southside Community Neighborhood Plan. That's won national and international awards for the approach. So my thought is, you know, I like the partnership we did with the census and the mutual buy-in between the county and the city, and that kind of that team that we had created with county and city electeds. And I think that would be a good way to move this forward, along with bringing this before our commissions, both at the county and at the city. There's certain commissions that can help get some of those more marginalized voices to the table. You know, I'm thinking about our Indigenous Commission at the city, diversity awareness, and then I know at the county you have a number of commissions that would very well be helpful. Anyways, I'm glad we're beginning the discussion, and those are my comments, and I appreciate it.
And while I'm waiting for others to queue up, you know, I'll kind of move on a little bit. We have an opportunity to comment on all these pieces here, but in terms of the endorsement and approval process, last time it did go through modifications. The board did look at the modifications after they occurred. At that point, we had locked into more of the philosophical components of the earlier version of the regional plan, and therefore we did not move to adopt the one that had been put forward before the public vote for the sake of the city. However, for the sake of the city, I think it makes sense, and we can have further discussions at board level that giving the city the opportunity to present their case associated with the regional plan. And there's always a challenge to move things through an election. It would make sense that so that we don't affect the election, that we pause long enough to allow you to move forward with your election. You know, I think we can have further conversations associated with that, but you know, that could compromise what you've worked very hard for too within your intent of what you want to do with the plan. Fair component that Councilmember McCarthy brought up. The real trick is as you unfold this, and as noted, you went through the Southside plan, which you had varied voices. There will be philosophical pieces that will be in play during this regional plan, and the management of how to move through those pieces. I'm curious to see how that would unfold. You know, my own comments on what you're laying out. It really is good. I do go cautiously on whether we have an advisory committee. If we do have one, which would be, in some ways, there's a benefit because there's a continuity of conversation from the beginning of development to the end, rather than different groups coming in and you go through a re-edification of the group associated with that. By the same token, you know, as noted, it did take a lot of time. I understand the recommendation. It's just some of those pros and cons associated with it. I am not seeing anybody else queuing up. We have an opportunity as council, as board members, as we progress through it, to continue to work with our staff and provide advice. For your sake, Sarah, I do have Supervisor Vasquez, Geronimo, that would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I just, after going through the area plan for Donny Park recently, I have a greater appreciation for what these bigger plans and process takes, and just wanted to say that I reiterate what Supervisor Fowler said about looking at diversity and inclusion and getting as many voices to the table and I'm willing to help support that and participate in some form or fashion to facilitate that. So thank you and good job.
Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
if I could just add for a moment, Chairman Ryan, I do think that you will see Melissa and I at many future joint and individual meetings with you. So you'll have, you and the commissions that you've appointed at both the city and the county will have many opportunities and be really kept aware of the process. We'll be providing reports in writing. There will be a strong communication, and that's our expectation, both from the managers at both the city and county level, and also from us as project managers. So thank you for your time tonight.
All right. Well, and I'm sure you're noting definitely diversifying the input that we have and providing the opportunity for the community on that. Fantastic. Well, with that, thank you, Sarah, and look forward to the future presentations. You always do quality work, and we certainly appreciate it. You know, we have, I'm going to do a check-in with staff. We have it lined up for a report on the jointly funded dark sky specialist position. And we have 20 minutes at this point. Can you get that done in 10 minutes? Or should we look to another time? Oh my gosh, is that Dan out there? You have that COVID beard that has evolved with time. Looking good. Hey, Dan. And there's Mark Stento.
Good evening, Chairman Ryan. Yes, I will keep this very brief, so it'll be less than 10 minutes.
Okay, fantastic.
Right. Okay. So good evening, Chairman Ryan, Mayor Deasy, members of the City Council and Board of Supervisors. I'm Dan Folk. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Flagstaff. And tonight I'm just going to provide a verbal update on a shared position that we have, our dark sky specialist, which is Mark Stento. And so Mark prepared a presentation. It's in your packet. I'm not going to walk you through it. I'll let you do that on your own. But we did want to provide an update tonight. For some of you, this is a new information about the shared position. For others, you're familiar with it. And so the way this position came about was it was an outcome of the joint land use study, which was completed and adopted by both organizations back in April of 2019. Chairman Ryan, of course, is very familiar with the JLUS, is what we call it, the Joint Land Use Study. And what that study did was it looked at land use and impacts around the two military installations in the county, the Naval Observatory Flagstaff Station and Camp Navajo. And it came up with recommendations on how to maintain the missions of those facilities and for compatible land uses around them. And so again, one of the recommendations was to have a jointly funded dark sky specialist. And that was approved the next year. So in February of 2020, both the city and the county approved a IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, to fund this position. And so the report gives you information on what has been accomplished in a relatively short time. Mark started, I believe, let's just say March of 2020. The IGA does expire July 31 of this year. And so both myself and my counterpart, Jay Crystalman, the County Community Development Director, will be bringing you a new IGA for the City Council. We plan to do this in May, and I think the county's planning on a similar timeline. And so we're hoping you will continue to support this shared position. It is funded evenly, 50-50 on the salary. This first term, we did have a $10,000 contribution from Lowell Observatory. We're very grateful for that, and thank you to Lowell. And so at a high level, I'll just talk about some of the accomplishments that Mark has been able to do. He's very involved now reviewing permits for lighting and doing inspections after lighting is installed. This really helps us so much with our compliance. He obviously works on compliance cases, so he's done a lot of work both in the city and in Coconino County to help folks with lighting that's in violation of our standards and getting those lumens reduced. There's a great chart in the presentation that demonstrates how many lumens have been removed from our night sky in just the last year. Mark is doing a lot of public outreach, which is one of the main things we wanted to achieve with this position. And so doing information on bulb replacement, working with property owners on what lighting is available to bring you into compliance, workshops on energy efficiency, And then finally, the county also received an implementation grant. Jay Crystalman, I believe, wrote that grant. The county was awarded the grant. And part of that is funding the non-conforming lighting database. This was another recommendation from the joint land use study. And so Matrix Design has been retained to do that, and Mark is working closely with that team to create that database, as well as create additional public outreach information. And so that's really my update for this evening. Mark Stento is with us. If you have questions for Mark, look for us coming to a meeting near you again to consider renewal of the IGA. We hope this time to have it approved for a 5-year term. Again, this last one was about a 16-month approval. And so with that, I'll answer any questions and see if you have any questions for Mark. So thank you again for your time tonight.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Very quick and a lot more to it. And I'm sure Mark will have some comments also. I do have Councilmember Raslin up. Adam, or Austin.
Austin.
I said Adam.
Austin.
I just blended the two of you again, huh? Austin.
It happens a lot. Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost for that presentation. As everyone should know by now, this is one of my most cherished topics and one of the things that I am most dedicated to protecting in Flagstaff. I think our dark skies are very unique. They're very valuable, and I think they are a very good symbol and example for what a community can do when it puts its mind to it. And frankly, we're all the beneficiaries of a lot of years of a lot of hard work, and we're standing on the shoulders of some very smart, innovative people from the before times. And one of the things that I'd love to hear from Mark. I'd love to hear how things are going. How I see in the presentation that folks are very happy with the opportunity to get some new amber bulbs in place in neighbors' backyards and things. But how are the neighbors themselves feeling when they get approached? Are they generally open? Are they approachable? Are they hostile? Are they understanding, or are they reluctant? I had my own experience with a direct next door neighbor trying to get them to change their bulbs. This person was very public safety oriented, and looked at me a little bit weird and was a little bit hesitant, but was willing to comply. And then they moved away, and for better and for worse, we ended up with a second home owner as our neighbor. So they don't have the lights on at all anymore. And the difference is, to belabor upon night and day. The backyard stargazing opportunities I have now are just absolutely tremendous, especially with our southward facing night sky in the backyard. I couldn't love and cherish that amenity more. And of course, as we know, one thing that wasn't explicitly mentioned but should always be a part of the conversation is the critical mission of the Naval Observatory, which is all about national security. It's not just about our local amenity and the economic value that dark skies bring to our region and our state, but it's about national security, and there's a lot of reasons for that shouldn't be talked about too deeply out in the open. And so, Mark, if you could update us a little bit, and then just one last thing I wanted to. Someone's using the blender there. One last thing I wanted to mention too is, I would love to see this position somehow leverage. Oh, I see what's going on there. That's convenient, isn't it, Mark? So I'll keep talking. I'll buy you a minute here. I would like to see this effort expand regionally. We're here working with the county. I think our dark sky initiative should be countywide. It should be implemented from the Hopi Nation to the Wallapai Nation, from Page and Fredonia all the way down into Sedona, everywhere that Coconino County is, we should be turning this whole region into an exemplary, successful example of a dark sky preserve that's region-wide. And in fact, it should extend all the way up through the Coconino and Colorado Plateau. It should include our national parks all over the region and all of the cities and tribal lands and counties and cities and towns everywhere. So there's a lot of partnerships I'm ambitiously thinking about. And I know that these things have been talked about before, and there's been some progress made here and there. But how can we really bring this up to speed? This is sort of like, I've used the analogy before that we're a dark sky is like the last tree in a forest. If we're not actively protecting it, and if we're not actively replanting seeds, we're going to lose that landscape, and we're definitely in danger of that. And the best way to have a good defense is to have an excellent offense. And I just wanted to lift up those thoughts and hear what you guys have to think about that too.
Thanks. So hopefully the vacuum won't reappear here shortly. I'm still at City Hall. I got back a little late this evening from Page, interestingly. So to address your last comment, my department agrees with you. We've had meetings with the Grand Canyon folks. As you probably know, they're Dark Sky Park. I've been up to Page to advise them regarding their code and assist them with lighting violations. Albeit, or admittedly, I don't have jurisdiction there, but they've reached out to us. We're in contact with the folks in Camp Verde. We've spoken with Yavapai County. We've met with Williams. We're trying to get all over the region. So we certainly agree with that mindset and think that's where the future lies. In terms of how it's going, we think it's going quite well. Of course, we don't have much to compare to. The proliferation of inexpensive LEDs with very high lumen per watt values is a difficult development, and it continues to gain pace with annually, and that's fantastic for efficiency, especially in the interior. But we're seeing a lot of those lights on the exterior. We're seeing lots of really bad, inexpensive, unshielded fixtures, bad in the sense that they're bad for our dark skies, being placed in the exterior of residential homes in particular. So the commercial side is relatively straightforward for us in the sense that we can pursue a violation very actively and ensure accountability through our existing processes on the code compliance side in both jurisdictions. Of course, the long-term difficulty is going to come from residential homes. The JLUS program, or the JLUS grant, is going to help with that substantially in that they are working with us to develop materials to facilitate outreach. We plan to take those materials, the design of those materials, and maintain them for posterity, I guess you could say, edit and have a database of outreach materials moving forward that we can then use and modify as needed as the situation evolves. So it's going well. We've had a substantial impact, especially in the city. Obviously, the county's much less dense. The cases are spread out much more. I mentioned I was in Page. We had a lighting case up there, Greenhaven, just south of the Utah border, and we just closed it up today. Some of them are a little bit more remote, but in that particular case, we probably, and I'm estimating here, we probably removed about 150,000 lumens of white light and replaced it with about 80,000 lumens of narrowband amber light.
Doubt it all. Yeah, some of those rural locations can actually produce an immense amount of light pollution.
Right. So we're developing or expanding our policies and procedures moving forward to address some of these more complex cases, especially some of the stuff in the county. County's been great about working with us on that. I've been in conversations too with some of the folks who own Twin Arrows and now Horseman's Lodge out 89, and of course other casinos in the region too. They're very interested in working with us to develop their own internal policies regarding their exterior lighting. So we're trying to get our fingers in everything.
Well, the best way to do this is with partners, not adversaries, but people who are also interested and understand the values involved and are eager to see the shared objective and goal reached.
We agree. Education is the way 90% of the time. We definitely prefer the carrot over the stick. With residential, that is really the only option, unless it's a severe trespass case. Certainly we could enforce there, but making our residents angry because they just bought new fixtures and they have to change them again is sometimes necessary, but mostly avoidable. And that's one of the reasons why we have our voluntary bulb replacement program to abate some of those things. So we're developing the tools we need as we move forward. We're seeing success with some of those tools. We're abandoning the tools we're not seeing success with. But as we move away from COVID, hopefully, we plan to expand regionally as much as possible. We've been planning a trip to Camp Verde for some time. Admittedly, that's not in Coconino County, but we envision something of a dark sky island in northern Arizona as well, and certainly those municipalities are part of that too. Same with Yavapai County, anything we can do in those areas too. So we share that vision and we're working on it and adapting as we move forward.
Mark, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but Daniel and folks at the county, if you guys need folks come along with you for some of those meetings, I would be happy to volunteer myself as available to help move those conversations along and just be a representative for the city. There may be steps involved with something like that, which I would be happy to follow whatever protocol is necessary. But formally, informally, I am available to help move that conversation forward in anywhere we can here in Coconino County. So keep that in mind, and thank you for all the hard work you're doing and for putting yourself in those awkward situations for the rest of us, so that we can get that dark sky back and achieve our critical mission for national defense and also for state tourism dollars and just the incredible local amenity that it represents for us here who live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin.
All right. Actually, I think I'm right there along with you, Austin, as well as others. But one thing that I could say, Dan, Mark, your staff have just done an excellent job in working on this. Starting out the program, the discussion associated with education was a big component. But through that, and it's much more complex than working with these corporate level groups, but Mark's had successes with different larger commercial corporate type to help with the modifications and to come into compliance using that educational component. So great job. And then using the opportunity with the JLUIS, as you had noted, is with the national defense component. It is very important for our installations locally, but that also has helped us use money to get money to help bring this together and apply it in a regional way. So great opportunity for further discussions off the side. I'll continue to advocate and hope our board will join on board. But we do want to, continue this relationship and share in our burden associated with that. So conversations for us to continue, but for everything that we've done, we have a lot of validation for what we've tried to achieve in that way. Just noted that Councilmember McCarthy would like to comment, and we're going to start wrapping up, but I don't want to cut Councilmember or board members off either associated with this. Go ahead, Jim.
All right, thank you, Matt. I'll be quick. As some of you may know, I did my master's thesis on the importance of natural quiet at the Grand Canyon, and I did a movie on it, and I've written journal articles about it. And the only reason I bring that up is I see a lot of parallels between the preservation of natural quiet and the preservation of dark skies. And I see, so philosophically, I'm there. I do support dark skies, just like I support natural quiet at the Grand Canyon and everywhere we can get it. Thank you. Matt, you are muted.
Yeah, we shut off at a certain hour. We were looking for, I thought you were putting the quiet up because of the vacuum cleaner in Mark's office, but no, on a more serious note, Jim, very much appreciated. Just noting what I was saying just a moment ago is Supervisor Horstman, rather than commenting, is just thanking everybody for all the good work and advocacy to protect our dark skies. Mayor?
Oh, well, I was just popping on the camera as we were wrapping up here, but
Okay.
I'll jump in there and just say I appreciate Mr. Stinto speaking with the Dark Skies Coalition and so forth. Your work has been very much noticed in our community, in our city, and it's making a lot of people very glad and proud of our city and in representation of our government. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that.
And much more to be done, and we look forward to the opportunity here. With that, it looks like our comments are wrapping up with this topic. I know we could go on much more. I would want to, but thank you again, Dan, Mark, and everybody. There's a broader team, and it's science-based. We have all our observatories that are involved in this as well, which is really important. And it's also good to note, for the sake of both council and board, we have the opportunity to look at our ordinances as we note the discussion associated with the LEDs in the future. With that, though, we are coming to that ending hour, and we have item number 10. And I think this is one of the great opportunities. I wish we were together in the room. Usually we start with interactions, don't hop right into business, and build on our relationships. But we've always had a great working relationship with the city. And so we go through a roundtable and providing the opportunity. And as we do, my apologies for not, with COVID, not reaching out to new members and the mayor. But here's a chance in a formal setting for you to have an opportunity to comment to the board, to the community. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and move through, I'll start with the city and then come through the county, and then I'll have the mayor and I to wrap up on this. But I'll start off with, since that man has spent some time on the council, I'll go to Council Member McCarthy. Jim, for wrap up.
So I'm on the hot seat, huh?
Yes.
Matt, I'll just say I've enjoyed working with you, and I've enjoyed working with the whole board. As you may know, I'm the chair of the Metro Plan now, which contains a couple, Aranima and Patrice are both on that. And I enjoy working with the people, and I think it's productive. And I'm glad we have meetings like this. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jim. And then we have Austin. And I'll try not to call you Adam again. I always mess up with you, Austin. I apologize.
You're not the only one. Anyway, I do have a 21-point bullet list here of things I'd like to know. I think I've been heard from enough this evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's very important that we continue meeting from time to time. We have things that we have high synergy on. We have things where there's natural tension between a municipality and a county. And the key is dialogue, good communication, and strong, positive relationships. And I feel like we are developing those very well. I'm looking forward to meeting Supervisor Begay and hanging out with Supervisor Vasquez more to get to know you guys personally. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm not going to steal the mayor's pun that he shared with me. I'll let him use that. But I'm eager to jump the gun and go ahead and take credit for it. But he's the one who noticed it, so you guys can have that to look forward to. But it's been a productive, high-minded meeting here tonight. I appreciate everything.
All right. Thank you, Austin. And then next up, I'll go to Regina, Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have prepared a 5-page remark, so please bear with me and allow me this time to share my perspective. No, just kidding. I am sending everyone tonight representing the city and Coconino County big, grateful, thankful hearts for all your hard work, dedication, and service to our community, whether it's public health, it's preparing for emergencies, protecting our watershed, promoting forest health, and some upcoming regional partnership on the regional plan. I thank you all. I also want to mention that I am with everyone in continuing further collaboration and partnership in my official and private capacity, as I also sit on the County Workforce Development Board and the Economic Collaborative of Northern Arizona, and I am MetroPlan's liaison to the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, which is chaired by Chair Matt Ryan. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Regina. And oh my gosh, as a council member and vice mayor, we have Becky Daggett out there. Is this your third or fourth regional plan, Becky?
I guess this would be the...
Should be 3.
3? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
There you go.
And I have, I have nothing this evening. Thank you. I've enjoyed this, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to get together with you all and have these discussions.
All right. Well, thank you, Becky, and we look forward to working with you. And I should note that Adam Shimoni did have to step off earlier, but then we have Miranda Sweet. Miranda, council member.
Thank you. Let me get my camera on. Thank you. I really enjoyed tonight, and thank you all for the presentations. I look forward to working with you more in person. It's so hard to have these conversations over the screen when I haven't met some of you in person yet. These conversations are important, the partnerships are important, and I just appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's great to see you and look forward to working with you as well. I'm sure we all are. Fantastic. Now I'm going to turn to the board, and I'll go with, let's start out with Vice Chair Lena Fowler. There she comes.
There we go. Well, hello. Thank you so much. It's really great to see everyone. I really enjoy our meetings together and the collaboration that we do have. And we pretty much support, the same and have the same goals pretty much for the city and the county. This year, we hope to have the Navajo Bridge Star Party that we have on an annual basis. We didn't have it last year. We hold that with the Loeb Observatory and amateur astronomers from the region. And so we hope to host that again in October, right on the Navajo Bridge with the Colorado River running on the bottom. So if you all could come out, it'd be great. We have talks about the Navajo teachings about the constellations, and then we have the Western side as well. So we always try to do the two approach. We are talking about having discussions about a regional dark sky reserve, and that's going really well. I'm really happy with that. One news is that in Page, the lake is very low, so it may impact our tourists and our economy in the region also. So that's something that the news is going to be coming out more about that. North Rim's going to open on May 15th, and we're continue to have discussion in the coming years to have the North Rim stay open year around. And we had NAU a number of years ago that did a study for us and worked with us, has been working with us to really look at the economy. The North Rim closes on, opens from May 15th and closes on October 15th. And it has a huge economic impact in the region, especially for the small businesses there. And it makes all the employees seasonal. So, you know, there are projects that we're working on throughout the whole region. And so anyway, that would be my update for everyone. So thank you so much for this meeting and the continued working relationship that we have, and look forward to seeing you all here very soon. When we all have everyone get their shots, we need to make sure that we continue to wear our mask and really respect each other's our own action when it comes to, or our own you know, when we're wearing a mask, respecting others that want to wear masks even when you don't want to wear a mask. I think that there's is such a discussion right now, but the more people wearing masks will be able to open the doors a lot faster. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Lena. And I'm going to go through numerically. I'll start with District 1, Supervisor Horstman. Patrice?
Yes, it's first of all, it is wonderful to see the city council members and the whole city team. And I have been fortunate over the years to know and work with many of you. And it's certainly my pleasure to now work in partnership with you on the Board of Supervisors. And I have also been able to work on Metro Plan, that my chair, Jim McCarthy, I am his vice chair, and of course Regina's on that as well. And it's really fun to work in partnership with all the members there of the City Council. And I do think that these are extremely important meetings. It's very important that we communicate, that we collaborate, and that we cooperate with each other for the best interests of our community. And that's what's so wonderful about looking at the City Council members and my fellow Board of Supervisors, is I know we're all doing this because we are looking out for the best interests of our community and working really hard for the best interests of our community. We love Flag, we love Coconino County, and it is my great pleasure to work with all of you. So thank you. I look forward to further meetings and further collaboration with you all. So thanks again.
All right, thank you, Patrice. And then District 2, Supervisor Vasquez, Aranima.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for a great meeting. Very informative. I really appreciated being able to get the presentations from the city's perspective, especially on the flood mitigation stuff, because I've gone through those presentations multiple times, but didn't have the perspective from the city in there. And so that was very useful and helpful. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I look forward to future meetings, collaborating with the city council and the staff, and and moving forward and seeing those areas where we can continue to collaborate and like Supervisor Horstman said, make the most impact for our community and continue to move forward with the regional plan and other strategic initiatives to help support our community. Thank you.
All right. District 4, Supervisor Begay. Judy? We may have lost her. All right, we'll bring it back and wrap it up. We're a little bit over, but good to have these exchanges. But Mayor, well.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first of all, I have to say this was the most stressful meeting of the last week. No, it was really, really nice to have you all. This is a great cap to a very long week for council. As you know, this will be our 6th. We were met Tuesday, Thursday, Friday last week, and then now Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this was a nice cap off to all of that. I first want to say congratulations to Supervisor Vasquez. And I'm really excited to see you join the board, and the board made the right decision here, and I'm really excited to work with you and meet with you in the near future. A few things we like to do is a little update on some current events, and just want to say we have 3 days left for our water challenge, the Mayor's Water Challenge. We're moving up in the place rankings, but this is a pledge to conserve our water supply and can be found at mywaterpledge.com. I wanted to mention that we're having a big thing for Nurses Week. So some awards that are going to be going out here. Downtown, there's going to be discounts for nurses at retail, food. We're having a kind of a fancy to do. So if you want to let nursing crowd know, we're really wanting to show our sincere appreciation for all the work that all of nurses do in general, but especially in these trying times. I'm looking forward to discussing further with each of you supervisors and collectively about broadband. We got some really cool things going out with that, as well as with the federal, state, and what we're working on. And also look forward to speaking with you in the future about opportunities to collaborate regarding a care center to help our community members. And we can pick that up at a later time. But in general, I guess I have to say it because Councilmember Aslan had to bring up the pun. Normally, you can't get through a meeting here without at least one pun. But but I just wanted to recognize and appreciate that we had this joint session to discuss recreational marijuana. So just, anyways, wasn't going to say it, but Councilmember Aslan made me do it. All right, so thank you, Chairman, for running the meeting. It was also nice to be able to sit back and really listen in rather than taking notes and getting all the agenda and making sure we're all on task and timing-wise. So I really appreciate your leadership, and thank you much.
All right. Well, thank you too, Paul and Mayor. Yeah, actually, I'll keep mine real short. We really these are great opportunities. Always a chance to exchange, get to know each other. Can't wait until we can bring it back together and do it in person. By the same token, many items that we have to work through. COVID, first and foremost, let's get people vaccinated. The sooner people get vaccinated, the more we can normalize society, which certainly will help our businesses and everybody else as well. So many issues that we work on, whether it's transportation, it's regional planning, et cetera. Always appreciate the relationships. As noted, we're not always going to agree with each other, but I think we have a pretty good track record compared to a lot of other jurisdictions in the state where city and county were working quite well together. And we try that, and we're doing that as well with our other cities. But in this case, we've gotten a lot done with the city of Flagstaff. So we certainly appreciate the relationship. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep it short at that. I look forward to really reaching out and working with the new members, but with all members of the council, if not here, but on other committees. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, and I look forward to our future meeting.
Good night, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.